£75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good morning to you. Just after 6 o'clock on Saturday, April the 26th. This is Weekend Breakfast, and I'm David Bull. Obviously, today, a very big event, an historic event, the funeral of Pope Francis. Thousands of people expected in the Vatican, of course, world leaders. And the big question is, who is going to sit where? There will be all sorts of diplomatic incidents breaking out today. And, of course, we will bring you the very latest on that and the funeral of Pope Francis, which is taking place later today. In fact, the service starts at 9 o'clock, so we will be on air throughout today's event, as I say, today's historic event. In the interim, great news. We're back on track. Great news this morning. The Tweed Run is taking place in London today. Some 400 people are dressing in their best tweed and then cycling for 10 miles in their impeccable outfits, all in the name of charity, kids.
Riding along on a push bike, honey, when I noticed you.
I've got that single, Dave. Yeah. Also, it's Remember Your First Kiss today, a day that encourages you to reminisce on that first special moment. Now, the question is, was your very first kiss, was it sweet, was it clumsy, was it funny, or was it down? Birthday, happy birthday to Melania Trump. Goodness me, it's her birthday, and she's obviously going to be at the funeral of Pope Francis. She's the First Lady of the US, as I said. She's attending the funeral of the Pope today. Now, how old do you think Melania Trump is? Well, I was very shocked. She turns 55 today. We'll discuss that in a minute. Happy birthday, Melania!
Happy birthday to you!
There you go. Let's move on and start today's show, shall we?
Today's fascinating facts.
So today's fascinating facts: on this day in 1607, Captain John Smith landed at Cape Henry in Virginia with the first group of colonists who established a permanent English settlement in America. On this day in 1886, wait for this one, John Tiller, ring any bells? John Tiller created the Tiller Girls dancing troupe on this very day in 1886. And on this day in 1923, the marriage of Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, later, of course, she became the Queen Mother, to the Duke of York. Now, the Duke of York later became King George VI. That took place at Westminster Abbey in London. Now, it was the first royal wedding at the Abbey since 1383. The newly formed British Broadcasting Company wanted to record and broadcast the event on radio, but the Abbey chapter vetoed the idea. How times have changed. And those are this hour's fascinating facts.
Wake up, it's time to play. David and Will, they'll light your way. With laughter and facts, you're in for a treat. Weekend mornings can't be beat.
Well, there you go. Well said, Dave. Weekend mornings can't be beat. A very good morning to you. 5 minutes past 6 on Saturday, April the 26th. It's going to be quite an extraordinary programme today. We have all our usual features. We're talking about all sorts of pertinent things to you, including the immigration crisis and, of course, the latest that Keir Starmer and Serco, which is the company which is operating the accommodation side for people who've come here illegally, are now pitching and tendering for 5-year contracts for landlords to put migrants in. We'll talk about that later on. We have a hugely busy programme and, of course, the funeral of Pope Francis, which is taking place in 3 hours' time in the Vatican City. So there's an awful lot going on this morning. And, of course, we'll have a mix of frivolity as well and fascinating facts and all the rest of it. But joining me this morning, Will Kingston, political commentator at The Spectator. Good morning to you.
G'day, David. You've got me thinking about my first kiss, and I'm a bit rattled, actually.
So, was it good? Was it bad? Was it hideous?
It was hideous. It was a game of spin the bottle in someone's basement. But the problem was that all of my friends had had their first kiss, I reckon, years before, and I was late to the game. I'd lied and said to them in the past that, of course, I've kissed heaps of girls. They didn't buy it. So when the bottle came around to me and I went in for the kiss, all of them in unison jumped up in excitement and went, hey!
Hey!
And so that was very embarrassing.
And so was it a kiss like Keir Starmer kissing his wife? You know, have you seen that picture of him where he's like...
It would have been the opposite. It would have been like a dishwasher. The tongue would have gone all in straight away. So somewhere in between the Starmer kiss and my first kiss is probably the type of technique that you should be aiming for.
It's the sort of thing that children have nightmares about, isn't it? About how to prepare for your first kiss. What do you do? And I seem to remember watching videos of people, you know, in a movie kissing, thinking, what are they doing? How do you do that? And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's very frightening as a teenager.
That's true. I remember trying on some apples occasionally. You know, fruit was always the go-to. And again, I don't think I've actually got a great deal better over the years, but...
How do you know that?
My lack of success with women, probably.
Okay, well, maybe you need some training. Maybe that's where you're going on.
Easier said than done, David. Easier said than done.
Well, please phone in if you want to help Will out with his predicament this morning.
Yes, I am single, ladies. I can, you know, if we can get a strap with my mobile number team, that would be wonderful.
This is turning into blind date, actually, so quickly. So if you're interested in Will Kingston, phone this number, 0344 499 1000. Let's talk about Melania Trump. This is really interesting, actually. So she was actually born Melania Knavs. She was born on April the 26th, this very day, of course, in 1970. She's Slovenian. No, obviously she's married to the President of the United States. Wait for this. She is the first naturalised citizen to become First Lady and the second foreign-born First Lady after Louisa Adams, who was the wife of John Quincy Adams. She's the second Roman Catholic First Lady after Jacqueline Kennedy and the second First Lady to serve 2 non-consecutive terms after Frances Cleveland.
Interesting. The thing that I always think is funny about Melania Trump is the double standards that the media holds to her. So if you recall Biden's wife, Jill, she was on Vogue, she was on the cover of every magazine, she was made to be a fashion icon and, you know, Dr. Jill. Have you ever seen Melania on the covers of anything?
No.
No, because she's, you know, married to horrible orange man and so therefore that she is treated with disdain, despite by all accounts being very intelligent. She's obviously gorgeous and apparently, you know, a very good mother.
Are you surprised that she's 55?
I was actually going to tip 55, but she is a stunning 55-year-old woman.
I thought she was older.
No, I was going to tip 55. No, that makes sense. Well, if you think she's old, like Donald back in the day would have gone for a younger woman, so it doesn't really surprise me.
Well, I mean, he's certainly punching above his weight.
Well, he is the President of the United States, David.
Yeah, but he wasn't at the time, was he? Because actually, it's quite interesting. So I was just reading about their backstory. So she was born, as I say, in Slovenia. It was actually Yugoslavia in those days. She was a fashion model at the age of 16. She then changed the spelling of her name to Melania Knavs and travelled to Paris and Milan to seek modelling work before she met this chap called Paolo Zampoli. Now, he obviously acted as some kind of agent, hired her, sponsored her immigration to the United States, and she was a model in Manhattan where she was introduced to the Orange Man.
Well, here's my question to you, because the media likes to make out that she can't stand him. What do you actually think their relationship is like behind the scenes?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I don't know either of them, but I assume they must like each other, I would assume. I mean, I imagine she's probably pretty forceful behind the scenes as well. I mean, I know he knows his own mind. I don't know.
Well, I have heard, Donald Trump doesn't listen to many people, but I have heard that she is one of the few people that he will actually listen to.
Well, that's
which you probably hope it be.
Well, as they say, the power behind the throne is always the woman. And particularly you've seen this across the board with male political leaders, where actually it's the wife who is the one that sits down and is the sounding board. In fact, and vice versa. So Margaret Thatcher, of course, Dennis Thatcher was the sounding board for much of Margaret Thatcher's policies.
Well, Jill Biden's been running the US for the last 4 years.
Well, certainly Biden himself wasn't running the US, was he? It's interesting. They married in 2005. They had a son, Barron Trump, and she dedicated most of her life looking after Barron. So that might also be a reason she's not as a model on all of those magazines, because actually she believed that she wanted to be a mother to Barron, and good on her, I say.
Yeah, I agree. I in every instance that I've seen her in the public eye, I think she's conducted herself very, very well. And as is always the case, she's treated terribly by the media because she is, associated with Trump.
Yeah. We'll talk more about her, actually, because she's got an absolutely fascinating backstory about her father, what her father did, what her mother did, and all the rest of it. Now, let's talk about the Pope's funeral. Now, I know I'm not Catholic, OK? So in terms of religious doctrine, it doesn't resonate with me. However, as a global spectacle, 1.4 billion Catholics in the world, this is going to be pretty unprecedented, I think, where you've got royalty coming in, you've got heads of state coming in, everyone is very confused and concerned about the seating plan, and we know that hundreds of thousands of people are expected to attend the funeral. We've got Catholic officials, mourners from around the globe. Now, let's have a look. In fact, Tommy very kindly printed me out the list of people going. But we've got Prince William going, who is representing the King. We can talk about that in a minute. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, Spain's King Philippe VI, Queen Letizia, Brazil's President, Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva. You've got all the political figures out there in force. Now, the bit that I am a bit of a nerd. So the thing is that this is all going to be about who's sitting where.
Yes.
So the things to look out for today is which seat is Trump in. My understanding is he's in the third row.
Oh, he's not going to like that.
He's not going to like that. Then, of course, you've got the situation where Trump, and we'll talk about this later as well, where Trump says to Ukraine, right, this is the deal we're doing to stop the war in Ukraine. It's a take it or leave it situation. They've not seen each other, but they're going to this morning.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the thing is, this is a historic event, but it's also very much a political event. And you know what I really like at these sorts of funerals and weddings and these sorts of things is we always get the lip readers that come out of the woodwork after. And you'll see, oh, what's he saying to her or she's saying to him, and you start to get that intrigue into the conversation. It's fascinating.
The whole thing is fascinating. And, of course, as you say, we need to be watching sort of the body language and the minute that people arrive, and we will bring you that as it unfurls later this morning. Now, also, I then wanted to know why the King wasn't going to be there, and, of course, this is royal protocol because, of course, the King is the head of the Church of England. His late mother didn't go to the previous funerals of the popes, and Prince William will attend the funeral on behalf of his father.
Well, David, can I just say, sure, protocol, fine, but there will be a few people hearing that and going, well, he's been pretty chummy with Islam recently.
Well, yeah, defender of faiths.
Yeah, defender of faiths. So it's interesting that he won't go to the funeral of the leader of the Catholic Church.
So should he be there?
I think he absolutely should. Yes, I think it's a matter of respect. And if he's going to play this I'm the defender of the faiths, multiculturalism is my bag game, then I don't really see why he should be sucking up to Islam, but at the same time not going to the funeral of the Pope.
I have to say I agree with you. But Prince William will be there. Let's just look at this. Isn't a paper I'd normally start with, actually, but this is the front page of the FT today. Final tribute. Francis has the last swipe at papal pomp. We talked. I was actually on air when the the Pope died, I came on air just after the Pope died. I didn't know a great deal about this Pope, but he was certainly seen as a moderniser. He reached out to all sorts of communities. In fact, particularly on the LGBT stuff, he said, "Who am I to judge? It is in the eyes. If people are good, it is in the eyes of God to judge." So that was pretty progressive for the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Now, I think there are lots of questions about what happens to the Church now. He was also seen to be out and about washing the feet of the impoverished. So he very much believed in sort of living, I suppose, through the spirit of the scriptures, he would say, but also just in terms of this funeral. He is breaking with centuries of funeral rites as well. He has been lying in state in St. Peter's Basilica, the body much lower to the ground without any papal regalia next to it, which is very unusual. Popes are usually laid to rest in 3 nested coffins made of cypress, lead and oak. He's going to be buried in a single wooden casket. He's also not being buried in the Vatican. He is going to be buried in his favourite church in Rome, Santa Maria Maggiore, with a simple stone inscribed Franciscus.
I think that's the positive side of things. And he definitely sounded like he was a man of the people in many respects. But allow me to play bad... I was about to say bad pope to your good pope. Bad cop to your good cop.
Right.
He was a woke pope. There is no...
He was a woke pope?
He was
Why do you say that?
He was the first woke pope. The way that he took a stance, particularly on climate change and other progressive political issues, alienated a lot of conservative Catholics. And I think the really interesting story coming out of this is, does the Catholic Church continue on their woke crusade, or do they go back to a more conservative style of leader? That's the story we need to look at.
Well, you're using that term woke crusade. Look, the point is that what you're now seeing is the Catholic Church is enlarging enormously, particularly in Africa, in the Philippines, for example. So it is it's an unwieldy alliance, actually, of many different types of Catholics globally. Now, the question I have for you is then, and obviously we go into the Conclave, and I started to try and watch Conclave, the movie, last night, but I gave up and went to sleep. But I do need to watch that. But so now, after the period of mourning, then they all go into the Conclave. They will then go through various ballots to decide who the next Pope is. We'll talk about this later on. But the runners and riders, if I can use that expression appropriately, you've got people who are deeply conservative there, which some Catholics will favour. You've also got Catholics who are more progressive. I'll say progressive, not woke. Which will then embrace some of the more modern Catholics that we're seeing around the world. Now, there are lots of other factors to play into. There is a lot of talk about whether it will be an Italian Pope. Will it be an African Pope? Will we see the first black Pope?
Yeah, it will be interesting. And I noticed on Pope Bet, which you can now bet on the next Pope.
I told you about that.
Yes. And you've put a bit of money on, haven't you?
Well, so just to let people know, I don't know if this is sacrilegious, but there is something called Pope Bet, where you can put money on who you think is going to be the Pope. So I have put money on a Pope.
Yeah, so we're looking at the odds before, and the leader is the current Vatican Secretary of State. I apologise, I've forgotten the name, but he is Italian.
Yes.
And he's at 2-to-1 odds.
Parolin.
Yeah, but you've also mentioned, I think quite rightly, that the favourite never wins.
Favourite never wins.
So we will see. This is a fascinating insight, David, into the ideological capture of the Catholic Church. We've seen the Church of England and the way that it has gone in recent times. So I think you will be able to tell how far gone is the Catholic Church when it comes to your term, progressive ideology, as opposed to going back to what really should be its roots, which is a more conservative, Catholic, scripture-led view of the world.
It's absolutely fascinating. So I'm just watching the pictures coming in from the Vatican at the moment. The funeral will be led by the Dean of the College of Cardinals, Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re. Guests including all of these people: Donald Trump, obviously, Melania Trump, Javier Milei, he's the president of Argentina.
Fantastic.
We've got Vladimir Zelensky, Keir Starmer is turning up as well, Prince William, Emmanuel Macron. Oh, Ursula von der Leyen, she likes a day out. she'll be there.
Got to fill in her time somehow.
Well, quite. We'll talk about that. By the way, there's this interview I commented on X this morning with Ursula von der Leyen talking to Keir Starmer. And she basically talks about closer European integration between the EU and the UK. Starmer looks like a silly little boy. He is nodding along to everything she is saying. And then basically she then says, and then, of course, the energy, she sort of says something about the the energy reserve of the North Sea. And I thought, Starmer will give her the North Sea at this rate.
He will.
Yeah,
of course he will. Yeah, it's really these sorts of events draw into really sharp focus just how unimpressive Keir Starmer is as a leader. And you look at people like, you mentioned Millet, and you look at the charisma that he brings to a room, and you compare that to Keir Starmer, and it is actually, it is a very sad reflection on British politics more generally.
Yeah, he's not a visionary, is he? He doesn't sort of engender optimism. People don't get behind him and think, wow, what a vision for the country. No. We have to be careful. The local and mayoral elections are coming up, which are going to be on Thursday. There's a lot going on there. We can talk a little bit about what is in the papers this morning, but without making too much comment on various political parties. Also, we will talk later on also about the latest in Ukraine. Donald Trump obviously desperate to get some sort of settlement in Ukraine. He wants to announce it on his 100th day of presidency.
Well, this is also where these two stories collide, because you know that Zelensky is going to be at this funeral. Trump is obviously there. That is the main political story to be watching, is how are those two interacting. We were talking off air about this proposed deal that Trump has put forward. I think it is reflecting the reality of the moment. I don't think you are fully aligned there, so I'm looking forward to discussing that.
I agree, and I'm looking forward to seeing the pictures as well, to see the body language when you see Trump and Zelensky together as well.
I don't think it will be warm, put it that way.
No, well, quite. Will, thanks ever so much for the moment. Also, after the break, what I want to talk about Trump's plan for Ukraine. Essentially, the United States has said it's a take it or leave it deal. We'll talk about what that plan entails, the meeting with Steve Witkoff, and of course, Putin as well. Apparently, it was smiles all round in the Kremlin when they had that meeting. Zelensky not involved, the European Union not involved, European Union not happy not to be involved as well. And then this big story this morning, which is the front page of the Telegraph. Here it is. Starmer is going to rent homes for Channel migrants.
Unbelievable.
This is something that absolutely enrages every single viewer and listener of this channel. The Home Office is launching a drive for landlords to house asylum seekers following a surge in the numbers of people coming over. So Keir Starmer says, I'm going to get them out of hotels. Of course you are. You're going to rent accommodation. And wait for this. You're not going to rent it for a year. You're going to rent it for 5 years. And by the way, people who were born in this country who cannot get into a house, where are they? They're being hotelled at the cost of the taxpayer. We'll talk about that after this break. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Weekend Breakfast. This is Talk 6:26 on Saturday, April the 26th. I'm David Bull, joined by Will Kingston this morning. Good morning.
Lovely to be with you, David.
And really good to see you as well. Of course, a really big day as well. The funeral of the Pope, which starts at 9 o'clock our time. We are watching what's going on in the Vatican. And as I was saying earlier, it really is a who's who is attending. We've got tons of royalty coming in. King Felipe and Queen Letizia from Spain. You've got King Felipe, Queen Matilda there. You've got Grand Duke Henri and the Grand Duchess Maria Theresa, Prince Albert, Princess Charlene of Monaco, King Carl Gustaf, Queen Sylvia of Sweden, Queen Mary of Denmark. It's like a who's who.
Well, Queen Mary, famously, Aussie Queen Mary.
Yes. Wow. Yeah.
Met King Frederick at the Sydney 2000 Olympics in a bar in Sydney. She's initially a Tasmanian girl. Yeah, so that's our contribution to, to the royal community.
Well, that's your contribution to culture and the European royalty.
Says a lot about
That's the only contribution. Yeah, exactly right. And then, of course, we've got world leaders from Argentina, Australia, Austria, Brazil, Croatia, the Czech Republic, and so on, Dominican Republic. I mean, really, it will be quite extraordinary to see this. Well, it is a pageant, I suppose. It's also a celebration of his life, and obviously it's where people say their final goodbyes. We are also closely watching who's sitting where. So as far as I understand, that seating plan is quite a closely guarded secret. So this is, the world dignitaries are going to be outside. We've got now sight of where Prince William is going to be, and Keir Starmer and Zelensky. The question is, where is Trump? Now, according to this, he is in the third row. Oh, dear. Right,
yeah, well, not going to be happy with that. Do we know where Starmer is yet?
Yes, so Starmer, according to my map here, is in the row behind Prince William.
Okay, but where's Prince William?
But Prince William is in the. So basically, we'll get a map. I'll get a map of this, and then I can show you exactly where everyone's going to be.
More importantly, do we know how they organise these seating plans?
The Vatican does it.
Yeah.
And also they said that actually this is a huge endeavour for them, because also it's about, and I'll talk you through this, but it's about the hierarchy in the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And then you've got the royals, which of course trump the world leaders, and the world leaders come in after the royals.
Yes, of course.
And then they, I believe, are going to be in alphabetical country order.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that it isn't based on, for example, whether there are any international feuds taking place.
No.
So you couldn't put, I don't imagine the Russians got an invite, but you couldn't put the Russians next to the Ukrainians, for example. Surely there are little, diplomatic things like that.
I would imagine. But I remember back in history, there were occasions where adversaries have been stuck next to each other at various other events. Let's move on, though, and talk about Ukraine, because this is the front page of the Times. This is a pretty stark headline this morning. Land deal is the only choice, US warns Zelensky. President Trump's plan to let Russia keep the occupied territory in Ukraine is apparently set in stone. This is what the Times has been told. Pressure is now building on Zelensky to accept this forced peace. As we say, of course, Trump is going to meet Zelensky today. The question is actually, do they spend time together? What we do know is Steve Witkoff, the US President's special envoy, has been talking to Putin. Apparently it was broad smiles all around. Now, this proposal, which we talked about, I've talked about it when I was standing in for Ian, I talked about it earlier in the week as well. It is an extraordinary deal in many ways. Let's just get to the bottom of this. Zelensky wants Crimea back, which was annexed in 2014. That is a very long time ago. And Trump, and I think this is right, said it would be very difficult for Ukraine to retake Crimea. But essentially, the way this works is that, according to the US, that Russia would keep Crimea, parts of the Kherson region. Anything north of the Dnipro River would be Ukrainian, so there would be some ceding of sovereignty from Russia back to Ukraine, but very little. And the US has the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and a minerals deal. And the question I have is, and I can see why Zelensky is so unhappy about this, because what has this war achieved? Russia keeps everything, pretty much.
Yeah, that's right. I think two things can be true at the same time, David. You can be empathetic, probably more sympathetic to the Ukrainian cause, and at the same time recognise the military realities. And the military realities is the battle lines have barely moved in over 2 years now.
Yeah.
If you remember 2 years ago, they had that push in the summer and it went nowhere. Unfortunately, I cannot see any pathway where the Ukrainians can achieve their military objectives, which is getting back their territory. So I think, again, this is unfortunate. This is sad. Putin is obviously the aggressor. This is an evil incursion into Ukrainian territory, but I can't see how that changes. And as a result of that, I think that this deal reflects the realities of the moment.
Well, I think you're right. There are some other things that you need to consider here. Recognising Russian control of Crimea, though, violates a principle of international law, which is no country can forcibly annex the territory of another country. How do you square that?
Well, no one really takes international law seriously, least of all Vladimir Putin.
No, but they should, shouldn't they?
Of course they should.
But if you're ceding...
But what does that change? What does that change? Of course he shouldn't be in Crimea. But at the same time, the reality of the situation is you're not going to get him out of Crimea. You're not going to bully a nuclear-armed power that cannot afford to lose.
And also, there is clearly the geopolitical dynamic of Trump cozying up to Russia. They admire each other. We've talked a great deal on this programme about the fact they actually admire each other and they want to have closer relationships. At the same time, also, Zelensky says Ukraine's constitution says that giving up Crimea can only be done with a referendum. Now, I would suggest if you put the referendum to the people of Ukraine and say, do you want the war to stop? And the quid pro quo is you actually have to give up Crimea, they'd probably vote yes.
Yeah, I think you may be right. And then the other thing which I think is often overlooked, particularly on my understanding is in the Donbass area, huge amounts of ethnically Russian citizens who would be very, very happy for that particular area to go back into Russian hands. So it is not a black and white situation of, you know, ethnic Ukrainians fighting a war against the evil Russians. There are a lot of ethnic Russians who are in Ukraine, as the borders are at the moment, who would be very happy to see Russia take that land.
Yeah, quite. Interestingly, though, we've spoken a great deal about Starmer's coalition of the willing, which seemed to go on the back burner. And then yesterday I was reading that actually it doesn't mean troops on the ground. It now looks like it would be some sort of watered-down arrangement. But now, according to the Telegraph today, the US has privately offered to provide security guarantees for the coalition of the willing. Now, this is quite important because essentially what the US is saying is we will not put troops on the soil in any capacity whatsoever. However, what we will do is we will give you intelligence and logistical support for British and European soldiers to back up the peace deal. That's quite significant.
Yeah, it is. I think you've got to think about the politics for both the US and for the UK. For the US, it means that they don't have to really get involved. They can just say, we'll help from afar, and so they tick that box whilst not looking to be interventionist. And for the UK and for Keir Starmer, it means that he can continue to use this as a way to try and avoid the real problems at home, and he can do his world's worst Winston Churchill routine, because really that's all he wants, is to be seen to be a leader on the world stage.
Where was it? It was in one of the papers. He's dressed in battle fatigues, and he just looks totally out of place.
Yeah, it really is quite embarrassing. And the thing that annoys me, to my point, is that this is so obviously an attempt to try and obfuscate from what are really pressing problems at home. And I think it annoys a lot of people. I think it would annoy a lot of listeners at the moment and viewers when they hear that Starmer is just ignoring what is going on in this country because he wants to be a global statesman.
100%. But doesn't that happen to every leader of this country, it seems to me? They get subsumed into international affairs. Well, actually, what I want is I want cheap energy. I want the cost of living to come down. I want people to actually feel there is some sort of democracy in this country.
Every leader of the UK wants to have their Winston Churchill moment. And don't get me wrong, I've got Winston Churchill as the background to my phone.
Quite right.
Quite right. Love the man. But at the same time, the world has changed, and really, the UK needs to focus on what is happening in the UK.
Yeah, Will, thanks for the moment. After the break, we're going to be talking about this other big story this morning. This is it in the Daily Telegraph, right? Don't inhale your cornflakes when I lift this up. Starmer is going to rent homes for Channel migrants. Yes, that's right. The Home Office is launching a drive for landlords to house asylum seekers following a surge in migrant crossings. Yes, that is right. They have a portfolio so far of 7,000 properties. They want to sign a deal with the landlords. Wait for this, not for 1 year or 2 years, but for 5 years. Paid for by you and by me. We'll talk about that after this break. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Weekend Breakfast. Hope you're having a lovely weekend. 6:38 already on Saturday, April the 26th. Of course, it's the funeral of Pope Francis today, which is taking place at 9 o'clock our time. We are keeping a beady eye on the coverage coming out of the Vatican. Of course, as I said, it really will be a who's who of who is going to be there, including royals and world leaders as well. It's going to be interesting to see the body language. We were talking about that. Trump and Zelensky together, Ursula von der Leyen there, Keir Starmer there as well. I mean, it's a huge melting pot. I was also reading about the security arrangements and the fact they've got snipers on the top of the Vatican as well. I mean, Will, it really, you know, you couldn't have, I mean, in terms of global events, you've got all the great and the good, really, politicians, royals, all in one area.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I imagine the security would be quite tight, David. I'm just looking through the list at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
I'll throw a question back to you.
Who is?
Quiz time. Yeah. Who is the leader of Cyprus? Who would you like to be sat next to today? Who would you enjoy having a little cheeky chinwag with?
Who would I?
Yeah.
It has to be Trump.
Yeah, Trump would be fun. For me, it would be Milei. I think Milei is just wonderful. The president of Argentina, the chainsaw wielding libertarian. But there are a few decent little options here. I think von der Leyen would be boring. Starmer would obviously be awful.
I mean, I'd sit next to Starmer and say, grow a backbone, concentrate on the United Kingdom, and actually do what. Well, I was going to say,
not
do
appropriate at this time, David.
Is it working people, working people? But also, the thing is, I was about to say, you should do what you promised in your manifesto. Oh no, you didn't have a manifesto, so therefore you can't do what you didn't promise.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, the United Nations guy, Guterres, he's awful. Yeah. It'd be a mixed bag, wouldn't it? A real mixed bag. Yes, it really
would. Well, so we'll bring you more on that as it happens. Now, wait for this one. This is the front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning. The Home Office has launched a drive for landlords to house asylum seekers following a surge in Channel migrant crossings. OK, let's just look at this, shall we? Because there are 38,000 asylum seekers in hotels. That is costing you and me £5.5 million a day. In total, I did a bit of digging. There are 65,000 asylum seekers across the board. And then we've also got 31,000 in what they call dispersal accommodation. Channel migrants have increased by 9,000 this year alone, despite the Prime Minister saying he is going to... Is he smashing the boats or the gangs or the whatever he's doing? Anyway, the Home Office is launching a drive for landlords to house asylum seekers following this surge. Serco. Now, Serco is a private contractor. It works for the Home Office. It's offering landlords 5-year guaranteed full rent deals to house asylum seekers. Now, there is promotional literature it has produced saying, we are responsible for more than 30,000 asylum seekers. This is their promotional literature. And we have an ever-growing portfolio of more than 7,000 properties. I know, because no one's leaving. The move comes after a new record for daily small boat arrivals was set earlier this month. And, of course, we're expecting weather reaching up to 27 degrees this week, which means, of course, we're going to see more and more small boats coming across. I am mindful what I'm about to say next, which is we have the local and mayoral elections taking place. Immigration is going to play, whether you like it or not, and I know... Well, it is a local issue, actually. It's going to play a major issue because people are saying, why are my hotels full of migrants?
Of course it's a local issue because it's also an issue of women's safety, it's an issue of crime, it's an issue of social cohesion, and that impacts every single community in this country. There's a question of fairness here, and that is, you know, whenever, and I've started this morbid game of whenever I'm walking from the tube to work, I will look at the amount of what I can see as probably English-born citizens who are sleeping rough, and then you hear 30,000 people who have come to this country illegally who are in either plush hotels or in houses. 38,000. And it is just disgustingly unfair when your primary responsibility as a government should be to your own citizens. But David, the other point is, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work this out, in that if you have incentives to come into this country, more people will come and more people will risk their lives at sea. You need to cut incentives like benefits and like plush hotels if you want to reduce the migrant numbers.
I would totally agree with that. Now, so the landlords are all invited to an event at a 4-star hotel in Malvern Hills. That's taking place next month. So that essentially, Serco are looking for landlords, investors and agents with properties in the northwest, the Midlands and the east of England. OK, wait for this. So this is what people are messaging me about. This is the deal. We will pay your rent on time every month, no arrears. We will pay full repair and maintenance. We will give you free property management. We will pay your utilities and council tax bills as well as that on top. Now, if you're a private landlord, generally, you pay for the upkeep and repairs, you pay for all of that stuff, you pay the management fee. I mean, if you are an unscrupulous landlord with bog standard accommodation, you are going to make a fortune.
Of course you are. It's an absolute rort. And again, I don't really blame those unscrupulous landlords, because if you've got a government that's this stupid that is going to put this deal to them, I'd probably take it as well. The other thing I'll just mention, David, because it's easy to think, well, look, I guess at least that they are refugees coming from war-torn areas.
But they're not.
But they're not.
No.
We know that 80 to 90% of them are fighting-aged men who are economic migrants. They are getting a free ride at the expense of the British taxpayer, and it is terribly unfair to the citizens of this country.
I absolutely agree. It's going to be interesting. Just very quickly, and we'll talk about this later. Nigel Farage did a press conference the other day where he said we're going to, if reform gets into government, we will have a minister of deportations. That seemed to go down pretty well as far as I could see.
Well, it's a popular issue, you know. It's a popular position, and this is the thing. I actually think he's been a bit soft on deportations, and you know the well-trodden or the well-discussed conversations between him and Rupert Lowe, who was much harder on deportations. It sounds like he's read the tea leaves, and that is that this is an 80-20 issue. Most people realise if you're in this country illegally and you don't have a right to be here, you should be removed. That is not far right, that is common sense.
So interestingly, and I'll find it in a minute, but there's another country in Europe which has said that even if you're allowed to stay in their country, I think it's Sweden actually, if you're allowed to stay in the country and you do not integrate, we're going to kick you out.
Yeah,
I read that and I was like, that is a peachy policy.
Well, the good thing as well, from what I saw from that speech from Farage, is he called out this multiculturalism charade, which for too long people have just gone along with.
Silos.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, David Cameron was saying this 15 years ago, Merkel was saying it, Sarkozy was saying it, and yet it's still been seen to be kind of quasi-racist if you call out this BS multiculturalist project. And so Farage, I think, is doing the right thing by saying, you know what, we can have a multi-ethnic society, but multiculturalism does not work. It has been largely responsible for the slow death of Europe, and it is doing the same to the UK. We need to call it out for what it is, which is a farce.
Well, I was watching how many politicians actually tweeted about St George's Day, because, of course, in the past, no one has done that. And then I think Keir Starmer rather reluctantly then posted something about St George's Day. I mean, it looked staged. He looked like a buffoon. I didn't believe any of it, but he felt he had to do it.
It was this weird centrist dad approach to patriotism where basically, you know, his patriotism started with, you know, the 1996 Euros enjoyed. He felt uncomfortable talking about his own country. I am not a British citizen, and I'm a bigger patriot than Keir Starmer. It is bizarre how he almost feels like it's a bit gauche. It's a bit cringe to have an enduring patriotism, because he associates that with the far right. He associates that with the right, and so therefore...
But you see, but he's so wrong, because a couple of years ago I was out campaigning and I went to an East End boozer, like a real East End boozer, on St George's Day, and they were celebrating like it was the end of days, you know, and they were very proud that we were celebrating the patron saint of this country, of England, and I just think we are always put on the back burner. I'm sick and tired of it. We should be able to celebrate our culture and our history and actually say we're proud of the country. Well, not at the moment, but we're proud of the country we can become.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you note that in that speech, he said we need to reclaim the flag against the flag wavers, as if, you know, somehow the people up until this point who have embraced that flag and who have and flown it with pride are somehow evil. They're somehow, you know, far right thugs. And that's the thing which, again, it's an insight into his psyche.
Yeah, lots of messages coming in. Good morning, Dr. David. Rachel, good morning to you. Every time I go shopping in my local town, there are people sleeping in shop doorways. Yeah, our Prime Minister wants to put illegal migrants into rented houses. How much more do we have to endure of this insanity? I know, Rachel. Paul in Exeter. David, do the landlords have to pay for the damage? Answer, no. Serco's going to pay for the damage. So it's a
Which
win.
means you're going to pay for the damage.
You're going to pay. Yeah, that's right. Well said. You're going to pay for that. Now, Nick Moore, good morning. One of our regulars. Nick says, good morning, dear David. None of us should be surprised at Starmer's lack of action today on smashing the gangs and stopping the invasion. The truth is he never had any intention of doing so. He's desperate to fill the country with indebted men of fighting age to turn on us when martial law is imposed because he knows our armed forces will refuse to do so. Now, this sounds fanciful, I know, but this government is betraying us bit by bit, and I predict a civil war if this government lasts beyond 2029. Thanks for that. Keep those messages coming in. Actually, that then leads me nicely to the question that I want to ask this morning. Do you think the Labour government has any intention whatsoever of stopping illegal migration? That's the question. 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well. I will read this out. I'm very mindful. We're in Purda for the local and mayoral elections, and I will let you comment. Reform UK is on track to win 2 key mayoral elections. This is in the Telegraph this morning. This is a YouGov survey conducted between April the 3rd and the 23rd. Reform has a 15-point lead in the Greater Lincolnshire mayoral contest, 14-point lead in the Hull and East Yorkshire battle. There are 4 Metro Mayor contests taking place in Greater Lincolnshire, Hull, East Yorkshire, West of England, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. It's the first time combined authority mayoral elections are being held in the first 2 areas. Reform in pole position in both of those. Dame Andrea Jenkins is on 40% of the vote in Greater Lincolnshire. These are linked. These stories are linked.
Yeah, no, they absolutely are. I think the last poll had Keir Starmer at minus 104% favourability or something like that.
Pretty good going.
He's having a tough run of it. And whilst I think Kemi Badenoch in the last month or so has started to show a bit of fight, and I think there may be a turn, the Conservatives still haven't really taken the fight to Labor in the way they should have, given the amount of low-hanging fruit they could pick away at. So you would expect Reform to do very well because Labor is doing so poorly.
Well, you would. But obviously, we wait to see what happens as a result of that. Thanks, Will. Keep those messages coming in. I'm just asking this morning, do you think the government has any intention whatsoever of stopping illegal migration? Your thoughts, please. 0344 499 1000. After the break, I want to talk about the sad news about Virginia Giuffre, prominent accuser of Jeffrey Epstein, of course, has died, according to the reports this morning, by suicide. I'll talk about that after this break. Good morning. This is Weekend Breakfast.
There's been a paucity of legislation which the government is seeking to redress by introducing, it's going some way towards parity with motorists. But in my view, there's a crucial piece of the jigsaw missing. And one of the problems is if you video in your car a cyclist cycling dangerously, what do you have? You have a cyclist cycling dangerously. How do you locate that cyclist? Well, you're not going to pull him over. When you have a car driving dangerously, you have a number plate.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 6:53. I'm joined by Will Kingston this morning, political commentator at The Spectator. Let me just bring you this news which broke very early this morning. Virginia Giuffre, one of Jeffrey Epstein's most prominent accusers, has died by suicide at the age of 41, according to her family. They said in a statement the toll of abuse became too heavy, in a statement confirming her death. She lost her life to suicide after being a lifelong victim of sexual abuse and sex trafficking. This was the statement from the family. Now, as we know, she was one of the most outspoken accusers of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She alleged they trafficked her to the Duke of York when she was 17, which Prince Andrew strenuously denies. Apparently, she died, this is late on Thursday, on her farm in Western Australia, so obviously the time difference there as well. She alleged that Epstein and Maxwell had trafficked her to the Duke of York when she was 17. He denied all claims. He did reach an out-of-court settlement with her in 2022, and that settlement, if you remember, also included a statement where he expressed regret for his association with Epstein, but there was no admission of liability or apology. I mean, however you read this, it's really sad.
It's incredibly sad, and the sad story that will follow on from this are the theories that will be associated with it. Social media is already ablaze with conspiracy theories. There's one tweet that just came out from, and I think I'm okay with Ofcom here, one of the most popular Twitter accounts, CatTurd, for people who are not chronically online. This is someone with 3 million followers and has been interviewed by Tucker Carlson. Right. He's the voice of the right, or the alt-right on social...
Called
CatTurd.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. And he said, hit by a bus last week, hospitalised in serious condition, then she recovers but commits suicide this week. Does anyone believe this BS? And I think a lot of people will be posing questions like that, which are not helpful and all that sort of thing, but that is where the mind does tend to go, doesn't it?
It does indeed. Lots of messages coming in. Good morning, David. Read the question about Labour and stopping illegal immigration. It doesn't have any intention of stopping illegal immigrants at all. I don't recognise my country when I go to the shops. The illegals are hanging around the shops, making themselves a nuisance. Thank you, Jade, for that. Let me just tell you, I'm staying in a hotel. I can't name the hotel. I'm staying in a hotel, right? Let's just say it has a very unusual group of residents in that hotel, and I got to the bottom of what was going on, and essentially the local council is paying this hotel a lot of money to hotel people who they can't accommodate in council homes because there aren't any council homes because, and I'm reading into this, they're full of people who have come illegally to this country. Now, even if you look at the numbers where the government says we want to build 1.5 million homes, there are 1.3 million people who haven't got a council home. So even if you complete 1.5 million homes, which are meant to be for young people, in the next 5 years, they will only go so far as to actually sort out the backlog.
Yeah, well, the other thing is they're not going to build those 1.5 million homes because we don't have the builders to build those homes. The other thing which is darkly funny about this, which is just the insight into government inefficiency, is that they couldn't actually even just directly put the illegal migrants straight into the hotel. They had to move them into the council estates. Then the people who should have been in the council estates, they moved them into the hotels.
Yes.
It's a combination of being morally abhorrent, but at the same time, a classic case of just government inefficiency writ large.
Well, there was one big hotel chain, which I say hats off to you, said we will never take illegal migrants. And I thought, right, I'm going to stay in that hotel chain because I like, you know, what you're saying and your methodology.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is sad that more private businesses are not saying the same thing. But they're not saying the same thing because this is a massive cash cow.
Massive.
And I don't think, I'd love to see a full and proper analysis of just how much the illegal or the economic migrant rort cost the taxpayer, because the thing which your little anecdote proves is it's not just the migrant hotels, it is all the second order consequences, like for example moving people out of council estates and into hotels and all of the associated costs that go along with it. It is enormous. It is
but also
huge
for
cost.
these residents who are there, this is no life, living in a hotel. It sounds very glamorous. It isn't, let me tell you, and particularly the hotel I'm in is not glamorous. And there they are, and of course what do? They're given board and lodging by the council. That includes meals and everything. So I see them, they're in the bar all day because they haven't got anything to do. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's no public transport. You can't get out. That's no life.
David, it reflects, I imagine, a feeling of my country has given up on me and they no longer care about me.
I think that's right.
Now, one of your callers actually said we may be heading towards civil war. I would have thought that would be absolutely laughable 10 years ago. I do not think it is laughable now. It won't be a Cavaliers v Roundheads lining up in the field type of civil war, but we are going to see more and more civil unrest if this sort of stuff continues, sadly.
Yeah, I would agree with you, actually. Alison in Wallington, good morning to you. Alison says, in answer to your question, does the government have any intention of stopping illegal migration? The simple answer, David, is no. David, this has been going on for years with private rental property. This is Ellie, good morning to you. Serco have been advertising for properties for 3 years. They give 5-year contracts and they pay everything, whether occupied or not. What you need to do is have a Google of Serco. The whole thing is totally disgusting. Ellie, thank you very much for that. Now, after the break, gosh, we've done an hour already. After the break, we'll go through all of this morning's front pages. We're going to be talking about Keir Starmer renting homes to channel migrants, the Ukraine deal, and, of course, we'll be talking about the funeral of the late Pope Francis. This is Weekend Breakfast.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
A couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid because it was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Give me it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello very good morning to you. Just after 7 o'clock on Saturday, April the 26th. Of course, it's the funeral of Pope Francis, the late Pope Francis, taking place in the Vatican City in just 2 hours' time. We're expecting people from around the world to attend. Of course, we've got royal families from around Europe attending. We've also got major political leaders from across the world. We'll bring you all the latest on that as it happens in the Vatican City. In the interim, great news this morning, of course, it's the Tweed Run. It's taking place in London today. Now, what does this mean? Well, 400 people dress in their best tweed and then cycle for some unknown reason for 10 miles in their impeccable outfits, all in the name of charity, kids.
There are 9 million bicycles in Beijing.
Look at those pictures. They're absolutely splendid. People in tweed on a bicycle, on a penny farthing, making money for charity. Also, today is Remember Your First Kiss Day. It's a day that encourages you to reminisce on the first special moment. Was it sweet? Was it clumsy? Was it funny? Or was it downright? Yes, that's right. Happy birthday to Melania Trump, of course. Of course, she's attending Pope Francis's funeral. She's the First Lady of the United States. She's attending the funeral, as I say. Now, wait for this. She is 55 today. Happy birthday, Melania.
Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
That was a happy birthday in Australian, as far as I could tell. Anyway, let's move on to this hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
Well, some new ones for you this hour. On this day in 1895, the start of the trial of the playwright Oscar Wilde. He was charged with homosexuality. On this day in 1962, this is wild. On this day in 1962, in a joint USA-British venture, the first what was launched? Well, the answer is the first international satellite was launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida. And on this day in 1976, I think a man who was a real legend, actually, the death of Sid James, British-based South African actor and comedian. He made his name as Tony Hanks.
Here, David Bowie brings the cheer. Fascinating facts that make us think. Will Kingston's voice, the perfect link.
Well, there you go. Good morning. 6 minutes past 7 on Saturday, April the 26th. You guessed, I'm joined by Will Kingston this morning, who is the political commentator at The Spectator. Good morning.
Good morning, Dave. That made my morning. What a lovely little touch.
You've got your own jingle.
Yeah, I'm very impressed.
You can take it home, have it as a ringtone. Interestingly, we were talking about Melania Trump. I'm slightly obsessed with her, actually. Of course, she was a model. She came from Yugoslavia, which was Yugoslavia, as we know. She then met Donald Trump through an acquaintance. She had a son, Barron Trump. And you were saying earlier on, of course, she really hasn't used her modelling fame to any great effect, really because she didn't want to, I think. What is interesting is her backstory, and I was just reading about this. Her father was a chauffeur, Victor Navs. He sold car parts for a state-owned vehicle manufacturer. He had connections with the League of Communists of Yugoslavia, which I thought was quite interesting. Her mother, Amalia, worked as a pattern maker in a children's clothing manufacturer in Sevnica. They lived in a state-run housing complex. She has an older sister and an older half-brother. Her father was a member of Yugoslavia's Communist Party, which espoused a policy of state atheism, but he had his daughter secretly baptised as Roman Catholics. That's some ascendancy, isn't it? From a state-run accommodation to being the First Lady.
It certainly is. Look, you can see what Donald... I don't think that actually...
What does he see in her?
I'm not sure whether that backstory was what he saw as being most charming about her, but I will go back to what I said earlier, and that is she is an immensely impressive woman. She speaks several languages. She's clearly very intelligent, but she gets a rough end of the stick from a media that despises her husband, so de facto despises her.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking at the latest breaking news. I was just reading about the latest. We're talking about a great deal about immigration. I'm asking this morning, actually, do you believe the Labour government has any intention of stopping illegal migration whatsoever? Now, One of the things, then you and I talked about this off air actually, was about the Rwanda scheme, because it seemed to me that we had gone through all those hurdles. If you remember, it went through ping pong in the House of Commons, the House of Lords. We finally got it through. No planes ever took off. I think we spent 300 million quid, which was 100 million per person, dignitary or Home Secretary who actually left the country and went to Rwanda to have a look. We'd spent all this money on the whole thing. What did we spend? 500 million or thereabouts to Rwanda, I think. And then we saw that actually it was starting to have an impact because migrants were leaving the United Kingdom and going into the European Union. Yeah. And, of course, many people were saying, well, actually, Keir Starmer came in and ideologically got rid of Rwanda. Well, the latest news is Donald Trump, according to The Sun this morning, has begun removing migrants to Rwanda. Less than a year after Labour axed our deportation scheme. I mean, it seems absolutely extraordinary. He basically has sent an Iraqi man to the East African nation with more due to follow, according to the US media. A diplomatic cable touts the possibility of a full-scale removal programme for third country nationals. The idea being the US will pay Rwanda to support housing bureaucracy and integration costs. Guess what? We paid for the infrastructure, which we've abandoned.
Yeah, so I've always thought that the right in the UK gave up on the Rwanda scheme far too quickly. I don't want to, or I'm hesitant to do my Antipodean lecturing routine. Because
Please do.
No one wants to be lectured by an Australian. But Australia went...
Can you spell lecture?
It's a K somewhere in there, isn't it? The challenge... Australia went through this challenge 10 to 15 years ago. Yeah. They solved this problem. They proved that it is a matter of political courage as less than a matter of political skill. And a key component of that, David, is you've got to do offshore detention and offshore processing. You know, the fact of the matter is, as opposed to giving out nice little homes that, you know, organised by Serco, if you put them in a Rwanda detention centre, it means, therefore, that they are less likely to come because it's a disincentive. And you know what? If you want to take the kind, compassionate argument, that means less people risk their lives at sea. The right needs to make this argument on compassionate grounds as much as on practical grounds.
I 100% agree. You cannot have people coming across here, pinning their hopes on coming to this country and then dying in the Channel. I mean, it's just not acceptable.
But this is what really annoys me with the left, is they go, oh, we're the kind, compassionate ones. We need to let people in. The right needs to have the guts to say, exactly right, under your policy, more people die. It's as simple as that.
And I feel very sorry for the children who obviously have none of their own volition in this. They're put in those boats and brought across, and of course, and they may well die as a result of what is going on. I also think you need to take a very hard, pragmatic look and say, look, these are young men of working age. They are not fleeing war-torn countries, are they? They are coming here as economic migrants. Turn them back.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, under the definition of what constitutes a refugee is once you pass through a safe area, in this case, France, you no longer become a refugee. You are an economic migrant because you have come from a place of safety.
And of course, what we were finding out, I mean, there was a lot of fallacy saying you have to claim asylum in the first safe country. That is not true. But when you, and we saw these cases last week of people who claimed asylum in one country, decided they didn't like that country very much, so they came across here and then decided to claim asylum here.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Well, why? Because you get a nice hotel, don't you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. But unfortunately, we're hamstrung by this international law, rules-based order approach of Starmer. I spoke to Tony Abbott, former Prime Minister of Australia, on this the other day.
Did you? What did he say?
Well, he was the one who stopped the boats in Australia, and he said, well, you need to have boat turnbacks.
So how did you do it? You sent the Navy out, did you?
You put the Navy there, you turn back the boats, so in that instance is turning back the boats to Indonesia, and he said, you can turn back the boats to France. And I said, well, Tony, what if France doesn't want to have the boats drop back? Well, he said, bad luck. What are they going to do? And I thought about it. You know what? Yeah, you're right. What are they going to do? France aren't going to go to war with us again. And if they do go to war with us again, the UK have beat them every time. But in all seriousness, if you turn back the boats, which, by the way, under the rules of maritime law...
UN Convention on the Seas, 1951.
You are entitled to do... that solves this problem. But again, it is a short-term thing, because what they found is if you have boat turnbacks, if you have offshore detention, and if you remove the incentives like hotels, within the space of a month, the boats stop coming. So it very much is a short-term little bit of pain, which then leads to the supply drying out.
Well, this leads me very nicely into what Nigel Farage has said. There was a UK press conference for Reform UK in Dover. He revealed he's going to create a new Minister for Deportations should Reform UK win the next elections as part of a package of new policies to get to grips with Britain's legal and illegal migrant crisis. So Nigel Farage said the whole debate about illegal immigration is fruitless until we leave the European Court of Human Rights, and we have to repeal the 1998 Human Rights Act. Cue the woke lobby getting very upset about all of this. Let's just pause and hear what Nigel Farage had to say about the state of illegal immigration and what needs to happen next.
But all they've done is to send away visa overstayers and those who are happy to voluntarily return, often with £3,000 in their pocket. We will demand, this government does the same, that there is a Minister for Deportations. It will be part of the Home Office, but it'll be a separate department within it. We will need to recruit new people, as much of the evidence is that those that currently work in the Home Office would willfully obstruct policy if we won the next general election. But somebody somewhere in government needs to be held accountable.
OK, so initial thoughts, and then I'll move on to explain where I go next.
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, I laughed when Richard Tice announced a Minster for deportations on Twitter. I'm all for deportations, but I think worshipping the practice may be going a tad too far.
Minister, yeah.
Look, this is obviously the right thing to do. It is an 80-20 issue in the eyes of the public. It's not far right. It's not racist. If you're in this country illegally, of course you should be deported. I do think it is interesting as well that it wasn't so long ago that Farage was taking a hard line with Rupert Lowe in his party about deportations, which he thought maybe would be against the mood of the nation. He's obviously moving more hard line on this, and he's moving there quickly. And again, Farage is a great judge of the sentiment of the nation. So I think it's an interesting political shift.
But the public has hardened.
Yes.
That's also what's going on.
Yes.
The public's attitude is changing. Now, this is interesting, though. So on the back of that, and I think that probably would have played very well with the electorate, then this chap, Ben Abis-Jekti MP, said, what would a minister, this is on Twitter, I happen to find this, what would a Minister for Deportations do that Border Security Minister doesn't already have responsibility for, Nigel? He goes on to then post, so the Border Security Minister is responsible for Border Security Command, I didn't even know we had one, asylum policy, asylum accommodation, return and removals, irregular migration policy, organised immigration crime, foreign national offenders, immigration enforcement and small boat arrivals. So this is the Minister... this is the Border Security Minister. Who is the Border Security Minister? Have you any clue?
No, I've got no idea.
No, neither did I.
Because they're not doing their job.
Because they're not doing their job. So I looked it up. Shall I tell you?
Please, please.
The answer to that question is Angela Eagle.
Right.
That's a great trivia question, because no one will get that, will they?
No,
that's a pointless answer.
Yeah, so
I mean, it is extraordinary. So she is Minister of State at the Home Office. She was elected as MP for Wallasey in the general election of 2024. Angela Eagle is meant to be responsible for getting people out of the country who are here illegally. She's not doing her job.
No, of course you're not. So part of this is obviously a canny branding exercise from Farage to say we're going to be focusing on this issue, and part of it is obviously taken from the US, where Tom Homan, who is the border czar in the US, is organising mass deportations. They've looked at that and they've gone, we're going to basically lift and shift that for the UK.
You'll like this one. David, this is Tim. Good morning, Tim. David, could we please have Skippy Will, that's your name apparently, Skippy, to replace the Home Secretary? So you're now...
I'd love that job.
Would you? You'd be tough, wouldn't you?
I would be tough. Look, and the funny thing is, David, I'm a legal migrant. I'm on a skilled worker visa. You know, I'm in one of the upper tax brackets, so I'm actually contributing to the country. Yeah. I believe in the values. It is often the people who are the legal migrants who despise illegal immigration the most, because they haven't actually had to work for it in the same way that the legal migrants do.
Lots of other messages coming in. Christine, Starmer will not stop the boats. He's going to carry on ruining this country. Good morning, Dr. David. Great show. Thank you so much. That's Carol, one of our regulars, and sunny, probably not very sunny, Shoreham by the Sea. What a brilliant guest Will Kingston is. I love the way the Australians think and protect what's right. They have the perfect attitude. Look after your own. Easy answer. Stop all benefits to these invaders. Have a lovely day. Carol, thank you for that.
Thank you, Carol. I can tell you not all Australians think that way. There are just as many woke loonies in Australia, but I appreciate the sentiment.
You made me laugh when you said Australia and skilled visa in the same sentence. I was just like, I just had to ruminate
Well,
on
obviously a few slip through the cracks, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Good morning, David. We can't trust Labour to run a bath. This is Andy Williams. No chance of them making any real effort to stop the invasion of future Labour voters. They will pay lip service to try and give perception of trying to stop the economic migrants, but only try to slow Labour voters leaving for reform. Great show, by the way. Thanks, Andy. That's very nice of you indeed. Mark in Selby, good morning to you. David, why do you believe the illegal immigration crisis has been allowed to develop to a point where anyone can sense the palpable anger amongst all classes of British citizens, by the way, apart from the Labour government? And if this is not a national security, just how high is the bar to make it a national security issue? Words matter, deeds are noted, and betrayal of a once safe and united country is never forgiven. That goes back to your point about a civil war.
Yeah, it's terrifying, isn't it? It's a really interesting question as to why this has got to the point that it's got to. And I think there are a couple of reasons. Number one is this slavish adherence to, international law, which has basically made it more difficult in order to be able to solve the problem. But I think the other thing which you can underestimate is the ideology of this kindness and compassion that runs through the left today means that they genuinely think they are doing the right thing by just letting them in, and they don't see the second order effects on the British people, and they don't see also the effects that it may have by people dying at sea. They think they're being kind and compassionate. It's that mentality which drives so much of this silliness.
And we will see what happens in the local elections, the mayoral elections, the elections taking place on Thursday of the week coming. I'm asking this morning, it's a really simple question actually, do you think the Labour government has any intention of stopping illegal migration into this country? 0344 499 1000. We'll take a break. After the break, I'll take some calls, but also I will take you through all of this morning's front pages as well. There are some other stories that are making the headlines as well. We'll bring you the latest from the Vatican as well. I'm keeping an eye on guests arriving at the Vatican ahead of the funeral of the late Pope Francis. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
hotels for very long periods of time.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 7:23, Saturday, April the 26th. Of course, the funeral of the late Pope Francis taking place in the Vatican City. That begins in 90 minutes' time or thereabouts. 100 minutes' time, actually. We'll bring you the latest on that. Of course, we're expecting royalty. We're expecting world leaders as well. The big elephant in the room is who is sitting where, and we believe that Donald Trump is sitting in the third row. That's going to go well, isn't it? Keep all your messages coming in. Let's take a call, though. Alison is on the line from South Wales. Good morning, Alison.
Good morning, David.
What's on your mind, Alison?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say congratulations on having Will on this morning, because actually his country's way of dealing with things is exactly why I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
Why do we let the boats land? Because once you let them land, you then have to deal with everybody. But we have a water border, we have a maritime border in the Channel, and we're not sending our Navy out to stop the boats from landing.
No, you're right. And actually, it's worse than that, because the French are escorting them over the line into British territorial waters. And, of course, then we've got the border taxi service picking them up and bringing them back.
Well, also, based on with the RNLI actually having to be used, as a child, we used to go out and put little envelopes through people's houses.
Yeah, I did.
For them. And I never understood why, and it was because my grandfather was torpedoed in the Second World War, and the RNLI obviously saved him, but he unfortunately died of his injuries. But my dad now would be appalled to know that we're spending so much money from the RNLI on life jackets, etc. Now, I totally get that there might be some casualties of doing this, but as Will said, it's the short-term solution to a long-term problem. And I just feel if we don't let them land, then we're not having to pay out on all of these other things.
And can I ask you the question then, just in terms of Keir Starmer and the Labour government, do you think the government has any intention of stopping this?
No, I think they don't know how to. I think, yes, they're incompetent, but I think they just don't know how to do it. They scrapped the Rwanda plan without it even being challenged and worked out. And I just don't think that they know how to do it.
I would agree with you, Alison. Thanks ever so much for your call. Really appreciate it this morning. This is Joanne. No, Labour have no intention of stopping illegal migration. I love your show. Thank you, Joanne. That's very sweet of you. Dean, good morning, David. Dean in sunny Dagenham. Oh, I'm staying near Dagenham, actually, at the moment. Good morning, David. Politicians cannot deny this illegal, and large numbers of legal migration have been planned for years. The reason I do not understand, but it seems Labour are too stupid to realise it will cost them their place on the globalist gravy train. In the EU, some countries are now waking up. I agree with that. Charlie from Cumbria. Top of the morning, guys. Great show. Thank you. This is Charlie. I agree with you, David, as do a lot of others. The British public is sick of being shafted every single day to Sunday. Labour were elected to represent us, and they simply aren't doing it. They're just not doing it. Conservatives, not as bad, but generally the same. It is time for change. I actually think we're seeing such a fundamental disconnect between the two legacy parties and the electorate, and they can't see it.
Yeah, I agree. This is an interesting question as to whether Labor actually wants to stop this problem, because I think in their heart of hearts they don't, but I think they are now recognising that this is potentially a fatal electoral issue for them. But the real thing is, do they want to do the actual things that are necessary to stop it? And really that means leaving the ECHR, and they're not willing to do that.
Well, I mean, I think there are other things going on here. Of course, we're seeing Keir Starmer cozying up to the European Union. I mean, that would be another betrayal of Brexit, you know. Then Rachel Reeves yesterday, wasn't she saying, well, she was basically trying to hedge her bets, and she was having meetings in the US or with the US delegation, saying that, of course, we, you know, need to do a trade deal with the US. And then she speaks to a European audience and saying, well, actually, the relationship with the EU is actually more important than the US.
Which is nonsense.
What she has, nonsense. but what she hasn't really understood is you can't do that. You can't speak to two separate audiences because we live in an interconnected world.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, it's no surprises that even the anemic UK economy is still growing a tad faster than Europe. Europe is dying a slow death economically speaking. I don't know why you would want to say that economically we would be aligning with them over what is still the economic powerhouse of America.
So Rachel Reeves, apparently, according to this is in the Telegraph, is in the Lion's Den. I think I could have told them that as well. So she, obviously, talking to the IMF, talking about Britain's growth, and the GDP was meant to grow by 1.1% this year, 1.4% in 2026. That's down, so we've been yet again predicted to grow less. It was 1.6 and 1.5%. Also, let's just look at what Reeves is borrowing. She was expected to borrow 137.3 billion in the financial year just ended. Guess what she borrowed? 151 billion.
So, David, in the last month, this country borrowed £17 billion. For context, if the government was to raise the basic rate of income tax by 2p, they would still get less money over the course of a year than what they borrowed in 1 month. I don't think we're taking seriously how diabolical the economic situation is in this country. And please allow me to rant for 20 more seconds.
Yes, please.
Because I hate how this government keeps talking about growth, and yet everything they do is anti-growth. It is a lie. We've known for hundreds and hundreds of years that the way you grow an economy is by lowering taxes and lowering regulation, and everything this government does is higher tax and higher regulation. At least if they were honest, if they said we want to be a redistribution government, we want to be an old school leftist socialist government, and we're just going to keep taxing and taxing, at least it would be honest. But they're saying we want to go for growth, and everything they do is the antithesis.
Well, let me
of
just
that.
ask you this. So in the run-up to the election, they cozied up to big business. They said, we're going to slash the regulation. We're actually going to be on your side. The businesses bought it, and the businesses were foolish.
Yeah, of course they were. There's been, 27 Quengos that have been created since the government were voted in and counting? Because the problem is they don't have that DNA in the government to say, we actually know how to grow a business, or we know how to grow personal
Well, none
wealth.
of them have done it.
None of them have done it.
Now, also, just looking at the interest, is unbelievable. Our interest payments on our national debt, by the way, £2.8 trillion.
Yes.
So our interest payments on the 2.8 trillion national debt also rose, costing us 4.3 billion last month.
Yeah, and look, not to be fair, but to put this in context, this is a problem across the US, Australia, the UK. Interest is the fastest growing line item on the budgets of those three countries. And you know why this is the case? It's because governments no longer have the guts to take hard decisions. Because if you want to stop spending and borrowing, you have to say that there are going to be some winners and losers as a result of that. It means cutting benefits, basically, and they do not have the guts to make that call, even though it's necessary.
Let's go back to immigration, because obviously this is the hot topic today. I'm asking, does the Labour government actually want to have any intention of actually stopping illegal migration? Let me know.
Talking about not having any guts.
Well, quite. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message, 87222. You can message us on X as well, at talkTV. Also, voice notes. Really keen on getting voice notes as well. Now, hopefully you've eaten your cornflakes by now. Just in terms of the civil service, Lee Anderson, who is a Reform UK MP, asked our civil service a simple question about illegal migrants coming across on small boats. I saw this clip on X. So Lee Anderson, actually, and I know Lee very well indeed, I thought he asked it well. He was inquiring as to what actual data do these civil servants have on the scale of illegal migration coming into this country. And when you see the responses from the civil servants, it will make your jaws drop open. Let's have a look at the clip.
I have questions on another topic, but I know Lee wanted to come in. So.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Simon. Hi, guys. Just one question from me. Put foreign offenders aside and Albanians aside, just forget about those numbers. How many people travelling on small boats that's been refused asylum have been sent to a third country or back to their own country over the past 3 years?
I don't think we have. I
think we'll write to the committee with those numbers, Mr. Anderson.
That's staggering.
They don't know. They have no idea. And it gets worse because actually that clip is much longer, because he then says, all right, fine, you don't know for 3 years. What about the last year? How many have gone back? We don't have that data.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There are some independent bodies that are trying to fill this gap. So the Centre for Migration Control is very good. I heard this stat from them the other day. Get this, David. 1 in 5 Albanians in this country have been arrested.
Yes, that's right.
Let me say that again. 1 in 5 Albanians in this country have been arrested. Why are they here? Why are they here? Why are we tolerating this? 1 in 5.
Also, just in terms of the sheer numbers of foreign nationals in prisons, and Nigel Farage has said that if reform and he was to be, get into government and he becomes Prime Minister, then he would deport every single foreign criminal that is in a British prison. Why are we not doing that now?
Yeah, that's the lowest of low-hanging fruit. I don't get it. Something which has been interesting, and we'll be watching the Jenrick Badenoch, I think, tension over the next couple of years, but he's been very good on this. And I saw him say during the week that foreign migrants are 71% more likely to commit crimes than British citizens. Like, this is just staggering.
Yes, it is. OK, let me just tell you, how many... we're playing a game this morning. How many foreign criminals are in British prisons at the moment?
Raw number? Jeez, I don't know, but it would obviously be well overrepresented as a percentage of the prison population.
OK, how many prison places... OK, so how many people are in prison, first of all?
So what's the population is, 70 million?
Yeah, we don't have very many prison places, by the way, just to give you a clue.
500,000?
No, we only have 88,000 prison places. We have 90,000 prison places in this country.
And we're filling them up with people making nasty tweets.
So there are, yeah, exactly. So if you say something hurty words, you go to prison. There are 88,000 people in prison at the moment, 88,521. How many do you think are foreign of the 88,000, just roughly?
Oh, I will say 15 to 20%.
Yeah, well, it's 10,500. So we don't have enough prison places, right? But if you take the 10,000 foreign people out of British prisons and send them back to the countries of origin, guess what? You've liberated 10,000 prison places, and then you can put people in prison.
Yeah, this is an absolute no-brainer. I just don't understand why they're not doing it. I really don't get it. It's another 80-20 issue which the government could actually get a bit of popularity out of. Like, I just don't understand the politics of it as much as anything.
I don't think they understand the politics. No. That's the biggest problem. Will, thanks very much for the moment. I promise I will go through the front pages at some point this morning. I will do those after this break. Don't go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk Weekend Breakfast, 7:38, Saturday, April the 26th. I'm joined by Will Kingston, political commentator at The Spectator. Are you enjoying yourself this morning?
Having a great time, David, on what is a historic day.
Well, it really is, isn't it? And of course, we're anticipating the funeral of late Pope Francis, which takes place at 9 o'clock. We're going to be talking about that actually at 8 o'clock. I'm going to be joined by Marco Colombo, who's a journalist and political analyst live from Vatican City. We will also start to see people arriving at the funeral and taking their places. Now, there's a lot of speculation over where people are sitting at this funeral. Delegations at the funeral, and I'm right when I said this earlier, are going to be seated according to the alphabet, but not any old alphabet, the French alphabet.
We were talking about this because we noted that Israel and Iran in the alphabet are dangerously close, but I'm not sure in the French alphabet how that would work out. Are we any better off?
Well, let's Google that. I imagine they will be. I would imagine they're still begin with I. I would begin with well. I hope so. Oh. Reigning monarchs will sit in front of other heads of state. So then you've got all of these monarchs, minor royals coming from, not necessarily minor royals, but some quite major royals as well, coming in as well. And then behind them sit the elected leaders. And of course, that's rather provoked some hilarity because, of course, Donald Trump is going to be in row 3, whereas I think he will think it's all about him. So that's quite interesting. So I'm just reading here. They're just saying in here, this is the latest line coming out of the Vatican. All foreign leaders will play second fiddle to the Argentines and the Italians and surrender to the whims of the French alphabet. 130 foreign delegations so far are expressing their desire to attend the funeral. The Vatican said on Friday, we've got 50 heads of state coming. Also Donald Trump, 10 reigning monarchs as well. I mean, I don't know what is the collective noun for a group of reigning monarchs?
You put me on the spot there. A crown of monarchs.
A crown of monarchs.
Crown of monarchs.
Okay. I'm just thinking if there's a better one.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there probably is.
No, I'm just thinking is there
No, I think we'll get in trouble with Ofcom with some of the thoughts going through my head.
Right, let's go through the front pages now, though, which I promised to do. Let's start with it's very unusual, but for me, but I do actually want to start this morning with the FT only because it is carrying this rather interesting article, just saying final tribute. Francis has a last swipe at the papal pomp with a pared-back funeral. So the bottom line, basically, as we know, this funeral is taking place. I think it's fair to say the Catholic Church is now finding itself in something of a schism. You've got an increasingly Catholic Church, particularly driven by Africa, by the Philippines, by other countries like that. But you've also got the ultra-Orthodox Catholics. You've also got the libertarian Catholics. And the question is, where do we go from here? Now, Francis then appointed all these cardinals, didn't he, that sit in the conclave. So, in fact, it's quite interesting in terms of the voting that those cardinals may well vote along his lines. And he was more of a libertarian, and I mentioned it right at the beginning when it came to gay LGBT stuff. He said, actually, if they're good people, then who am I to judge, because the judgment can only be made by God himself. He has pared it back. He is not being buried in the Vatican. He is being buried in his favourite church, which is outside the Vatican. There's a procession going to that church later on, and he's also going to be buried in a very basic coffin.
Well, I think what you've just summarised is the good and the bad of this Pope. The good was he was a man of the people. I think he did have that common touch. The bad is he did also advocate for a very, let's say, progressive worldview, which was at odds with the Catholic scriptures and also really alienated many conservative Catholics, particularly on climate change, which he made one of the big priorities of his papacy.
Yes, and later on we're going to be talking about the runners and riders, who is going to become the Pope. Pietro Padalin, I believe, is the front runner, but there again, as I said also earlier on in the programme, of course, the front runner never really becomes Pope. So we'll talk about that. Let's move on to the Times now. We've spoken about this morning as well. This is the Times saying land deal is the only choice. The US warns Zelensky. Essentially, I'll paraphrase this to save you reading it, but essentially Trump is saying, it's take it or leave it, boys. Yeah. Here's the deal. Witkoff was there meeting with Putin. They've come up with a deal. This is the deal. Russia essentially holds Crimea. It holds various important parts of the Donbass. It will hold those. Anything north of the Dnipro River would become Ukrainian. The US then holds the Zaporizhzhia power station. Trump says we do not need to put troops on the ground because there will be Americans in Ukraine because we're going to have so much of the infrastructure and rare minerals, and that will then deter Putin.
Yeah, I think there's a certain logic to that. Trump is obviously immensely frustrated. Don't forget that he said that he would sort this out on day one. It's approaching day 100 of his presidency, which will be the 29th of April. So he's, I think, at his wit's end on this. And I think he also realises the cold, hard reality that the Ukrainians cannot win this war. And it's sad, but it's the reality.
Let's move to the Daily Telegraph. I thought I was having a nightmare this morning. Anne Robinson was looking at me from the front page of the Daily Telegraph. I used to work with her, you see. I did Watchdog with her for 3 years. Morning, Annie. Morning, Annie. Anyway, that is not the story. The story is Starmer to rent homes for Channel migrants. This story we're talking about. The Home Office essentially has decided that their brilliant new idea, well, it's not a new idea, but they essentially, Serco, which is one of the contractors working for the Home Office, is offering landlords 5-year guaranteed full rent deals to house asylum seekers. Also, just in terms of that, not only do they get all the rent paid, they get all the maintenance done, they get all the management thrown in, they get the utility and the council tax bills. It's a no-brainer if you own an HMO, a house of multiple occupation, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. And look, this story is a microcosm of everything that is wrong with modern Britain. It is a story of priorities being out of whack. It's a story of incredible inefficiency, and it's a story of everyday Britons being sacrificed at the altar of this sort of woke virtue signalling that this government so dearly loves.
Absolutely. Let's move to The Guardian now. Here we go. The EU paves the way for the youth to travel and work freely. This is quite interesting, actually, because the EU never makes concessions. That's what I learnt from my time in the European Parliament. Basically, it's their way or your way. Now, according to The Guardian, and you do have to read this with a pinch of salt because it's The Guardian, the EU is prepared to make major concessions in negotiations to allow British and European 18 to 30-year-olds to travel and work freely, potentially paving the way for a long-awaited reset with Brussels. As I said, of course, Keir Starmer sitting next to Ursula von der Leyen and her incredible hairdo, where she basically told him what to think. He didn't reply, and he looked like a little schoolboy. Anyway, the Youth Mobility Scheme would allow thousands of young Europeans to come to the UK. This is being seen as a key European demand in reaching a post-Brexit pact. Now, it looks like they may have climbed down and said, look, OK, we will agree to this as a 12-month limit on Europeans coming to the UK to work. And they're also, allegedly, according to this, open, to a one-in, one-out style plan being considered by the Home Secretary. If that is true, that is a bit of a climb down because they wanted it to last for many years.
Yeah, it is a climb down. There are concerns over this. This does feel like it is another way to try and re-implement the return to the EU in disguise. I don't have a problem with these sorts of youth mobility schemes in principle if they're the right countries. Australia has a youth mobility scheme with the UK.
Hurrah.
You know, exactly right. I took advantage of that visa at one point in my life. But again, there are countries in the European Union where I don't think we would want to be sharing that reciprocal status with, and that's why we got out of the European Union in the first place. The other concern, of course, is that these people will turn up and then they just won't leave. And let's face it, until we have the Minister for Deportations, there hasn't been a great appetite to do anything about those people who outstay their visas.
No, well said, well said. It's interesting, isn't it? And the way that Starmer's cozying up with the European Union, talking about commonality, and of course trying to ride those two horses by saying we need to do free trade deal with the United States, but oh no, we're not having chlorinated chicken, and at the same time saying we're going to have reciprocal standards with the EU. Now, if he does that, that is a massive betrayal of Brexit, which many of us, including myself, fought very hard for. And the point is, when I see stuff written on Twitter where people say Brexit has failed, well, the reason it's not worked because we haven't done Brexited.
We haven't done it. We absolutely hasn't done it. And you're right, that is a real worry, because I've spoken to a lot of people who are very pro-Brexit, and because of the absolute failure to implement it correctly, on principle they're starting to shift. So that will be a real concern, and I think it's something which Farage and a Badenoch have to think seriously if they want to be alternative prime ministers. It is a real worry. It's a real worry.
I agree. Will, thanks for the moment. We'll take a break. After the break, we'll continue with our front pages. Also joining me will be Tom Clayton to give us all the latest sporting headlines. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
So they're both saying the same thing. Now, what the energy sector is right about, and this is a very technical point, is that in the short term, if the international price is still high, even if the government cuts taxes, that profit will simply go back into the pocket of the energy companies rather than back into consumer. What the government is trying to do is persuade us that the greater the use of homegrown renewables,
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. 9 minutes to 8 already on Saturday, April the 26th, joined by Will Kingston this morning. Right, well, I'm going to finish these papers if it kills me. UK rail crisis deepens with 2025's worst train services revealed. Yeah, that's right. Cancellations up 13%, 1,000 services acted today. The top three worst performing services, Go via Thameslink, C2C and Merseyrail. And, of course, this is before Labour wants to nationalise the rail industry with Great British Railways. Daily Mail, Greg Wallace, sex pest claims left me suicidal. That speaks for itself. The Mirror, make tourists fear us. This is Brits jetting off on European holidays. Of course, the Europeans are trying to make everyone feel uncomfortable going to Europe, which seems a very bad idea if you rely on our money over there. And I think they were talking about Ibiza and they were talking about Mallorca as well. The Daily Express, Britain will enjoy a week of 27-degree heat. Woohoo! Wow, that's great. Speedo wear will. And then the Sun, Wonder Whale. Brothers perform for the first time. Neighbours tell them to turn it down. Don't care. That's the Gallagher brothers. Right, it's now time for Tom Clayton's Sporting Weekend.
Tom Clayton's Sporting Weekend.
Good morning, Thomas.
Good morning. That wasn't as intense this week. I enjoyed that. Your introduction.
No, so because I got halfway through it and then forgotten that I wasn't doing the comedy accent.
Right.
So
fine.
I then thought I'll do the comedy accent.
Fine.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. I liked it this week.
Okay, good. Excellent. Now, shall we start with boxing? Because you know that I know a lot about boxing because obviously I had to box at school, which we talked about previously. And, of course, two people, Ben and Eubank, Chris Eubank, I remember from my childhood, of course, big boxer, and Ben, and something...
Ben,
Yeah, and tell us, what's the latest?
Well, they're fighting this evening. Not Nigel and Chris Eubank Sr. They fought in the 1990s and a couple of big grudge matches, and their sons have decided to come together and have a grudge match on their behalf.
How old are the sons?
So Chris Eubank Jr., who is the senior of the two that are fighting today, he's in his 30s.
Oh, right.
Conor Benn is in his late 20s.
Right.
So they've been around for a little bit.
Is it one of those ones where they've got headgear on and big gloves, or is it a proper one?
It's an actual proper boxing match, yeah. They originally were going...
All right, calm down, Tiger.
They were going...
I want blood!
Right. You might get it tonight as well if you're watching or listening live on talkSPORT, of course. But yes, so there's been lots of drama going into this one because it's been classed as a bit of a rivalry, a grudge match, a familial, generational grudge, which is all very exciting.
Who's going to win?
Well, this is the thing. We don't know. It's so tight, and if you... Someone said on talkSPORT this week, if you get a room of 10 people together, 5 people are going to say Ben, 5 people are going to say Eubank. It is so close. So you've got the youth and the kind of speed and exuberance of Conor Benn. He's the smaller of the two fighters. And then you've got the experience and the size of Chris Eubank Jr., who I think a lot of people would expect him to win because he is the bigger fighter. He's more powerful. He's come down weight divisions to meet this fight. They've kind of met in the middle. So Conor Benn has put some muscle on. Chris Eubank has taken some off, although he actually did miss the weight yesterday when they weighed in. He was over by 0.05 pounds, or 22.5 grams.
So what happens?
So they're going to have another weight this morning. He's paid a £375,000 fine to Conor Benn for being overweight, and then they have something called a rehydration clause. So basically, when after
we should implement that generally and fine people for being overweight.
Thank you.
I wasn't looking at you.
You were looking at me.
I wasn't looking at you.
Okay. Anyway, so anyway, there's this point, something called a rehydration clause. So after they've cut down and tried to make the weight and they've done everything and they've kind of put the bodies through all sorts, basically they reweigh them this morning to make sure that they've not gone above and beyond and eaten too much.
And is it like they'll both be under?
They'll both be within that, I would have thought, because Chris Eubank was so close to the limit. As long as they've not gained £10 each.
Fine. And just in terms of the prize money, what do they stand to earn?
Gosh, it's millions of pounds is the purse. The fight's on at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's going to be in front of a sold-out crowd. Of course, there's going to be box office events on television. Fortunately, it's free on talkSPORT, so you can listen to it.
Well, there you go.
There you are.
There you go. It's the place to be, Tom.
Yep, and also get all the fallout on the talkSPORT box.
Now, I know you have to run off, so very quickly, FA Cup semi-finals.
Yes, FA Cup semi-finals weekend. It's a big weekend, so there's lots of sport going on in central London, to the point where the police have actually said, just be careful, because there's going to be a lot of people around. Of course, with all of the people are going to be celebrating St George's Day this week. But the two matches at Wembley this weekend, you've got Aston Villa against Crystal Palace today. Then tomorrow you have Nottingham Forest against Manchester City for the right to play at Wembley again and potentially to try and win a major trophy. Villa haven't done it for a long time, neither have Palace, and Forest I don't think have won a major trophy since the 1970s. Meanwhile, Man City, it's like their second home. They've been there every year for the last 10 years, I think it is. So very excited for them. All alive on TalkSport. Palace against Villa today, about 5:15.
Super, Tom. Thanks ever so much. And of course, tomorrow London Marathon. We'll be covering that as well because so many people taking part in that. I hope the weather improves by the time of the London Marathon. Tom, thank you very much.
I'll go pay my tax for being overweight now.
That was Tom Clayton's Sporting Weekend.
See you soon.
Tom Clayton's Sporting Weekend.
Oh, how to make friends and influence people, Will. I mean, he's going to kill me when I leave this studio.
Yeah, I like the tax, though. I like that as an idea.
Well, yes. Well, I had this... so on aircraft, I'm going to get into trouble, but I had the idea that you should be weighed with your bag and you pay a price based on your weight and your luggage.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. What do you make about all these fat loss jabs, by the way? Manjaro and Ozempic and all that stuff.
That is a huge conversation. I couldn't possibly go into it with 90 seconds to spare. By the way, we've had so many messages saying they cannot... Lots of people say, this journal, I can't believe Will Kingston is single and available. Too many women have been brought up in this woke schooling system in the UK and blind. This one says, Stephanie, good morning, you handsome pair. I cannot believe Will can't find a girlfriend. I won't ask why. I think we all know Starmer has no intention of sending migrants away. Why does he want to destroy this country? Please get Will on more. Oh, you've got Will Frank going on here. Get Will on more. He is absolutely great. So you can get in touch. Will needs a date at talk.tv. Will needs a girlfriend at talk. I'm kidding, actually. So lots of people...
I'm not.
No, you're not. Okay. Do you want me to set up an account for you to get you a girlfriend?
I'm open to all offers.
So what's going wrong? I mean, I know this is not a news show, but what's going
we're
wrong
turning
in
into a dating show, which actually could be an interesting spin-off type of thing, David. We should look into that.
We should. So what's going wrong?
Oh, like basic personality issues, I suppose.
Yours or theirs?
Oh, obviously mine.
Is it your political leanings?
You know what? I think that was an issue maybe a while ago, but I think you have younger women who are becoming slowly more right-wing as the world goes more and more crazy.
Well, I think so. Can I just say what a great pleasure it's been to have you this morning. Thank you so much for coming on. Make sure you come back again soon, please.
Will do.
And have a good rest of the weekend. Right, we'll take a break. After the break, we're going to be concentrating on the funeral of the late Pope Francis. We'll be joining Marco Colombo, who's a journalist and political analyst, live from the Vatican City as the heads of state and the royals arrive in the Vatican City for the funeral of the late Pope. That's all still to come after this break. Also, we have our head-to-head today as well with Lettis Bromovsky and Luke Hildyard.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid because it was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good morning to you. Just after 8 o'clock on Saturday, April the 26th, of course, an historic day. The funeral of the late Pope Francis taking place in an hour's time, 9 o'clock BST, of course, 10 o'clock Central European time. We'll bring you right up to date with the latest there, and people arriving now at the Vatican. Also, as it's Saturday, of course, great news this morning. It's the Tweed Run. The Tweed Run is taking place in London today. Now, what this means is that 400 people or thereabouts dress in their best tweed and they cycle for 10 miles in their impeccable outfits, all in the name of charity, kids.
I want to ride my bicycle, bicycle, bicycle. I want to ride my bicycle.
Brilliant track, that. Also, it's Remember Your First Kiss Day today. It's a day that encourages you to reminisce on your first special kiss. Now, the big question is, was it sweet, was it clumsy, was it funny, or was it downright hideous?
I just want your extra time and your kiss.
And happy birthday to Melania Trump. She is the First Lady of the US. She's attending the funeral of the Pope today, and she is 55 today. Happy birthday, Melania.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. Happy birthday to you.
Bing bong. Right, let's move on to this hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
So here they are. These fascinating facts on this hour. On this day in 1989, Nass County Kildare in Ireland held their first annual pig race. Watched by over 7,000 people. One punter won 200 quid on his favourite, which was called Porky's Revenge. And the bookies handed the remainder of their money to the charity People in Need. On this day in 2000, the Home Secretary, this couldn't be better timed, actually. On this day in 2000, 25 years ago, the Home Secretary, Jack Straw, witnessed 9 people being caught attempted to illegally enter the United Kingdom as he inspected immigration procedures in Dover. And on this day in 2014, the only surviving letter thought to have been written on the ill-fated Titanic was sold at auction for £119,000. Those are this hour's fascinating facts.
Weekend mornings we're taking flight. With David Bull, everything feels right. Weekend breakfast, shining like the sun.
Good morning, 5 minutes past 8 on Saturday, April the 26th. That's my favourite jingle, Dave. Thanks very much for that. Lots of stories happening this morning. Of course, the funeral of the late Pope Francis taking place in an hour's time. We'll talk about that in just a second. Also, the front page of the Times this morning. Land deal is the only choice. The US is warning Zelensky. Essentially, Trump is saying, take it or leave it. This is the deal that we've done. The Steve Witkoff has met with Putin, all smiles all round, apparently. Essentially, Russia keeps Crimea, it keeps various areas of the Donbass. Anything north, as my understanding of the Dnipro River, remains Ukrainian. Zaporizhzhia power plant is American, and of course America gets the minerals deal. Now Zelensky very unhappy about what is going on, saying this is constitutionally not possible because it has to be put to a referendum from the people of Ukraine. Also, other commentators saying this is in breach of international law. Also, what does it say in terms of messaging to Putin? Because you're basically saying you can keep all the land that you've illegally occupied. So that is the front page of the Times. Now, this one has driven you all absolutely bonkers this morning. Starmer to rent homes for for the Channel migrants. You can't make this up. So Serco, which is one of the contractors working for the Home Office, is offering landlords of HMOs, these are the houses of multiple occupation, what is a great deal. We're going to pay your rent, we'll pay your service charge, we'll actually fix the properties, we'll pay your council tax, we'll do everything, and you make tons of money as a result of that. And the problem here, which is being underpinned by the numbers, we have 38,000 asylum seekers in hotels currently. That costs us £5.5 million a day. When you look at the total number, though, and that isn't the full figure, I looked this morning, 65,000 asylum seekers currently in the country. We've got 31,000 in dispersal accommodation not being dispersed. And when you look at the numbers coming over, they are increasing enormously. 9,000 up this year already. We're about to see, according to one of the papers this morning, about the heat wave that's coming this week. Where is it? But we're going to see very hot temperatures this week. And, of course, what does that mean? We're going to see more small boats coming across. So those aren't the big stories this morning, but all eyes now on the funeral of the Pope. Well, just on that, the Vatican is preparing to handle big egos, according to the Vatican themselves, as world leaders fly in for the state funeral of Pope Francis, the Archbishop of Westminster, he has said. This is Cardinal Vincent Nichols said the ceremony today would be a masterpiece of stage management when you consider those state leaders who have high opinions of their own self-importance. So Donald Trump, the US president, is amongst the leaders set to attend the service, which will be held outside the Basilica. So it's in this sort of amphitheatre area outside the Basilica. His Catholic predecessor, Joe Biden, will also be in attendance as well. That's according to Il Messaggero, who is the Rome Daily. Now, Keir Starmer is also going to be there. I mean, this is absolutely fascinating. You've got Trump there, and you've got Zelensky there. We heard earlier from Will, you've got Iran seated very near to Israel. That's going to be interesting. We've got Michael D. Higgins, the Irish president. The King is not going to go, but the Prince of Wales is there attending on behalf of the King, which is in line with protocol. The Vatican has said 130 foreign delegations have confirmed their attendance, 50 heads of state, 10 monarchs, 10 reigning monarchs. Cardinal Nichols said the organisers of the funeral are geniuses at dealing with these big events. He said, I think they've been doing it since the emperors ruled Rome, so they pretty much know what they're doing. So that's interesting. There's so much that we need to talk about here, and I've got my eye on what is going on in the Vatican at the moment. Joining me now is Marco Colombo, who's a journalist and political analyst from Vatican City. Marco, really good to talk to you this morning. It's a very important day. It's an historic day, 1.4 billion Catholics around the world. Give us a sense of the solemnity, the celebration, the importance of the event.
Absolutely, an historical moment, a special Pope, felt by the people, Pope of the people. Just to give you some numbers, 250,000 people visited St. Peter Basilica just in the last couple of days to pay respect to the Pope, laying in his coffin, a very simple coffin where he decided to be with his shoes, and he's going to be buried with his black shoes. He didn't want any pomp, he didn't want any luxury. He's going to be buried the same way you would have seen him on St. Peter's Square the last day that he showed up to his crowd, to his believers, which was on Easter Day. People have been gathering since 5 o'clock this morning and entering the square. Another 250,000 people are attending the square today. 1 million people are expected to be in Rome because what the Vatican has decided to follow Pope Francis' legacy and requirements is to translate the body of Pope Francis from the Vatican to another major basilica, Santa Maggiore. So that will mean a procedure through the Rome city centre, which will take probably an hour. I mean, they're going to do in a car very slowly with 3 or 4 cars, very minimum, but basically it hasn't been done for years. I mean, the last time that a pope decided not to be buried in the Vatican was 100 years ago. So it's not only involving the Vatican, it's involving the whole of Rome. It's going to be on live globally. As you said, 140 delegations from all over the world, 40 confessions. So it's not just a Catholic event, it's a world event.
And I'm just watching, as we all are now, watching the live pictures coming in from the Holy See. Live there, we can see hundreds of thousands of people crowding in there. Just in terms of the legacy of the last Pope, I was on air, actually, just a few hours after the Vatican announced his death. In many ways, he was a libertarian. I've mentioned this before. He moved the church I suppose, in a more libertarian way. Now, the Catholic Church is a very broad church. It is growing exponentially in areas like Africa, for example, the Philippines, deeply religious country as well. He appointed all of these cardinals, many of whom are also more likely to be more liberal, more progressive rather than ultra-conservative. Is this a moment of danger in terms of choosing the next pope?
Well, I wouldn't know if it's danger. What's been happening, the cardinals have been meeting. There are congregations, so the cardinals in Rome first, as you said, in the aftermath of the death. Now cardinals have been pouring in from all over the world. There's been the story of a cardinal coming from New Zealand, took 30 hours to fly in. So definitely today they're all here. As from tomorrow, they're going to start some meetings because the conclave wouldn't start until the 5th of May. As you said, it's likely that the next pope is going to be voted by that overwhelming majority. Out of 130, 110 have been elected by Bergoglio. But you also have to remember that Bergoglio was appointed and elected by the cardinals elected by Ratzinger, ultra-conservative, and Wojtyla. So what happens in the conclave, in the Sistine Chapel, is always a mystery.
And just in terms of that, there will be, I suppose, a sense that, well, in terms of the front runners, and we'll talk more about that, we're going to join you again in an hour's time, but there are those cardinals that are believed to be more likely to become the next pope. What is your thinking on this? Is the church likely to go for someone who is going to be more ultra-conservative in his approach, or will it be a more liberal approach? Because clearly one of the things that the church has to do is to keep all of those disparate bodies from around the world together.
Yeah. So the conservative are mostly the North American ones, and also Cardinal Muller, who's been speaking very outspokenly about the legacy of Bergoglio, saying we're not voting another Bergoglio, we're voting another St. Peter. Kind of like, let's move on and go back to the roots. Kind of like, let's go back to the Ratzinger roots. So, some conservative views have come out. The outrunners, the people that are likely to be the front runners, the Parolini, Cardinal Parolini, who is the Foreign Secretary of the Vatican. At the moment, he's the person that was there with the Pope last night when the coffin was sealed. He's been literally traveling with the Pope throughout his 12 years. There's also a Filipino cardinal, and then there is another very liberal cardinal who is Zuppi, who at the moment is in charge of the Italian bishops, but he was the delegate of the Pope for Mozambique, for instance. He struck a deal in the Mozambique war. He was the delegate to Ukraine. So he's somebody with a very strong international experience and also dealing with drastic situations. Zuppi at the moment is the Archbishop of Bologna.
OK, so let's now also talk about the attendees, because we've got delegations from 130 countries, 50 heads of state, 10 reigning monarchs, all coming in. Now, just in terms of the seating plan, there's been huge speculation as to who is going to be sitting next to who. My understanding is that the Holy See gives preference and precedence to Catholic royalty. They take pride of place in the front row. Then, after them, come non-Catholic royals. That is, for example, the Prince of Wales, who's there, the King and Queen of Sweden, the Crown Prince and Crown Princess of Norway. And then behind them come the world leaders, the heads of state and the foreign dignitaries. So that will be Trump and then Ursula von der Leyen. You've got Giorgia Meloni there. You've got Javier Milei, the president of Argentina. And, of course, as I mentioned, and this is where it all gets very interesting, they're going to be seated in alphabetical order according to the country, but in French.
Yes, the presentation has been done in French yesterday. I know there's been some speculation that Trump has been. We read articles that Trump was unhappy about the seating, so maybe something has been arranged, but it's unlikely because, as you said, the Vatican has been ruling these funerals for 2,000 years. They've got their own rules and they try to stick to the etiquette. So you have to remember that clearly, as well as a Catholic leader, as a religious leader, the Pope is also a monarch, an absolute monarch, in fact. So when he prefers other monarchs, he's only paying respect to colleagues in a way, as opposed to elected head of states like Italian head of state and American head of state. So that could be one of the reasons. We're going to find out in the next call. We're going to see who is seating where. But it's I have a memory of a bench where there was Bush Senior, Bush Junior, Clinton, all sitting one next to each other. At that time, I think here also the problem is Trump wouldn't want to see next to Biden, wouldn't want to have Zelensky probably near to him, even though Zelensky's in town and is likely to meet Trump. So there's a lot of politics, international politics going around. So this is a religious event, it's a funeral, but it's also like a massive G20 or G7. With some meetings actually not expected for a long time. I'm pretty sure that Zelensky wasn't expected to meet Trump, and that Trump has been meeting Meloni, even though Meloni has been flying to US only last week. So some meetings are easier than others. But Meloni has been meeting with Prime Minister Starmer yesterday. One was visiting the St. Peter Cathedral with Cardinal Zuppi. So there's a lot of going on. There's a lot of influence, but that's what funeral have always been. The moment of diplomacy, the moment where each nation makes feels like they're desired for a new pope.
Well, indeed. And of course, these rituals are extraordinary. Smashing the papal signet ring from the last pope, used to authenticate the official documents, sealing the papal apartments to prevent looting, that was all carried out. Just in terms of what we are about to expect, so the service begins at 9. Can you just very quickly tell us what happens when the service begins?
So there's going to be an official mass. There's going to be, as we said, the coffin has been sealed. So it's likely to be in Latin, most of it. It's a very formal procedure. It's likely to last for about an hour. Then, as I said, there's going to be the coffin is going to be taken through the streets of Rome. In terms of the actual funeral, those who are Catholics were probably going to take the Eucharistia. It's quite formal, but it's also it's been decided lately to have it outside, so it can be in an open environment, so the whole crowd can see it. And there are 4,000 journalists accredited, so it's going to be pictures are going to be all over. I guess a lot of journalists. I was actually having dinner with some photographers. Are going to be looking at those interesting photos of Trump and maybe having a chat with somebody or smirking at somebody, or other world leaders behaving in a funny way. So while the religious event is happening, the eyes are going to be on the world leaders.
Well, they certainly will. Really good to talk to you, Marco. We'll come back to you in about 40 minutes' time, if we may, and you'll give us an update on the latest from the Vatican. Marco Colombo, their journalist and political analyst, live from the Vatican City. Just now veering on to other matters, Brian Goodwin, good morning to you. Brian says, good morning, David. Starmer's decision to rent HMOs to illegal immigrants is going to cause massive trouble to local communities. It will lead to civil unrest. I just don't understand his thinking. Starmer will go down as the worst Prime Minister in British history. Good morning, David, says Ali in Sidcup. Please, can you have Will on with you all weekend, every weekend, please? It was a great pleasure having Will Kingston here this morning, I have to say. Loads of you saying you can't believe that Will is single and you're putting yourselves forward to be his girlfriend, so thank you for that. Get Will on more, he is fantastic. This is the Will Kingston fan club, I think, going on here. Now, Gina, good morning, David. Great show as usual, thank you, and love your current guest. Much common sense spoken by him. Call me a conspiracy theorist if you want, but I've always believed that even this Labour government cannot be so stupid to be doing things that they are. Therefore, it has to be by design. I do not believe they ever had any intention of making the economy stronger, stopping the blooming boats, or for that matter, smashing the gangs. They are singing to the tune of the globalists and the EU. It is a dire situation. It is frightening for the future of my kids. Gina in Warwick, thank you for that. Good morning, David. That 22 billion black hole looks like a drop in the ocean. Thank you for that. Joanna, good morning to you. Renting houses for migrants with all the mod cons and benefits, I assume for bills, fully furnished TV, Wi-Fi. Yeah, that's right, paid for by you. Well, David, our ex-servicemen would love that rather than the cold hard streets. I couldn't agree with you more. Where are the priorities of the British state when you have former service personnel who are sleeping on the streets, who have turned to drugs, who are desperate for help, they have no roof over their heads, and we are giving illegal immigrants a roof over their head, we're looking after them. And I said that in the hotel that I'm actually in at the moment, People who are from that borough in London are being hotelled, so the local authorities paying that hotel bill because they haven't got any accommodation because it's full of illegal immigrants. There is no sense in what is going on, and as Will said, of course, you need to look at the collateral costs all round. Keep all of your messages coming in, please. I'm asking this morning, do you think the Labour government actually has any intention at all of stopping the boats? 0344 499 1000, those calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on Talk as well at Talk TV. Now, after the break, it's time for our head-to-head. Joining me this morning, Lettice Bromovsky, who's a journalist at the Mail Online, and joining her will be Luke Hildyard, who's the author of Enough, Why It's Time to Abolish the Super Rich. He's also director at the High Pay Centre. That's all still to come. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
So they're both saying the same thing. Now, what the energy sector is right about, and this is a very technical point, is that in the short term, if the international price is still high, even if the government cuts taxes, that profit will simply go back into the pocket of the energy companies rather than back into consumer. What the government is trying to do is persuade us that the greater the use of homegrown renewables,
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk Weekend Breakfast, 8:27, Saturday, April the 26th. The lines are red hot. Barry in Norwich, good morning.
Good morning, David. How are you?
Yeah, all right, thanks very much. Your thoughts this morning?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on this government and illegal migration you were talking about earlier on.
I was.
Yeah, I think for the last maybe 20, 25 years, all governments have let this country down badly. It's a choice that this Labour Party are making and the last Conservative government are making. I don't know if you see the front page of The Sun the other day, did you? Was that a headline on there of the millions of pounds that are paid to this hotel?
Yes, I did.
Why there's so much money in it, and why this country, and it is this country's fault they're coming across the channel, why they are giving them free bed and lodgings, free housing, bus passes, driving licence, food, gas, electricity, and all the other stuff that comes, and you see British citizens who lived here, born here, and fought here on the street.
Yeah, I mean, I think what that article did is it showed what other countries gave the migrants and what we give the migrants, and that we were poles apart.
I think it's an absolute disgrace that the British people in this country are second to illegal migrants, and why they are giving them houses and that. They're here illegally. They're criminals. Do you know, it's a choice, David. Do you know, it's a choice. They can stop them coming over if they just wiped away all that stuff that they give them, but they don't.
So Barry, then, does the Labour government have any intention of stopping illegal migration? That's the question.
No, of course they don't. Why you got a vet Cooper holding up the sign with a hand saying refugees welcome, and you've got a human rights lawyer as Prime Minister and Keir Starmer who can't do anything without being told first?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, he's taking us back into the EU through the back.
And just very quickly, because time is tight, is it going to come back and bite Labour, this?
Oh, yeah. I think both parties are buried, mate, gone. I think that'll be a long while before any of them get in power again. And I just hope and pray that Reform get in, because they are the only party that I trust for them to do what they say they're going to do. I believe Nigel Farage will come in and put a stop to it. Yeah, Keir Starmer's got no incentive to put a stop to it, and the Conservatives won't put a stop to it either. They campaigned on four general elections on cutting migration. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
The Labour Party is smashing the gangs. I mean, how many years have been smashing the drugs gangs? You're not going to smash the gangs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's So yeah.
Barry, I hear your message loud and clear. Thanks ever so much. Always good to talk to you. Right, let's move on. It's time for Head to Head.
Head to Head.
Well, joining me this morning, Letters Bromovsky, journalist at the Mail Online. Joining her, Luke Hildyard, author of Enough, Why It's Time to Abolish the Super Rich, obviously not aimed at me, and director of the High Pay Centre. Good morning.
Morning.
How are we both?
Yep, very good. Glad to be here.
Good. Now, let's just look at this. This has enraged our listeners and viewers this morning. The front page of the Daily Telegraph. Starmer to rent homes to channel migrants. Let me just tell you. So the Home Office is launching a drive for landlords to house asylum seekers. This is Serco, one of 3 private contractors working for the Home Office. So they have this promotional literature. So they say, we are already looking after 30,000 asylum seekers in an ever-growing portfolio, like this is a really good thing to celebrate, of more than 7,000 properties, right? So what they're saying is that we have an event taking place in the Malvern Hills, which is going to be next month. We are looking for landlords, investors and agents with properties in the northwest, the Midlands and the east of England. We will pay your rent on time with no arrears. We will repair and maintain your properties. We will give you free property management. We will pay your utility and council tax bills as well. And if you own an HMO, Lettice, it is absolutely slam dunk, that.
Well, I mean, if you're a landlord, you'd be looking at that and being like, me, this is a great deal for me here.
Yeah.
And also, when we look at it in just a financial perspective, this will be reducing the cost of housing asylum seekers down to £14 from the £145.
Do you believe £14? I don't.
Well,
Not in
in
an
the
HMO. I mean, that's
if you
what they're
are in
saying.
a home, it's going to be reduced. Whether it's going to be £14 a night or not, it's going to be less than the ridiculously overpriced cost we're doing right now in hotels, which is costing what, £700 million a year?
Yeah, so £5.5 million a day.
Yeah, and so you can understand why your viewers, why other people are absolutely infuriated by this. Imagine what you could spend that other £700 million on, maybe helping the thousands of people who are homeless on our streets, or the thousands of families who are struggling with the cost of living. And yet we're seeing it go to asylum seekers, and we do have to house them somewhere because we're not going to be able to deport them anytime soon. The Rwanda scheme failed and all of that. So we do have to house them, but the way that it looks right now is they're being treated in such an exorbitant way that families who are saving up all year to go to these hotels and save just their one holiday a year, they're being housed.
Well, so that's a really interesting point. So I'm staying in hotels a lot at the moment. The price of hotels has rocketed because there isn't the availability, because they're taken up by people who are here illegally into this country. That being said, Luke, Lettuce is right. You have to put people somewhere until you deport them or make a decision on their application. Do you believe the Labour government has the intention to stop illegal migration, or is it simply the Labour government has no idea what it's doing because they've given these enormous promises, haven't they not? But when you look at the numbers, 38,000 asylum seekers in hotels, as I said, 5.5 million a day. We've got 65,000 in total in the UK, got 31,000 in dispersal accommodation, 9,000 illegal migrants coming. The numbers are going up, they're not going down, and they're not deporting at the rate that they need to be deporting.
Well, there's a note in the Telegraph article that you cite just down the page, and it says that actually the number of migrants deported is the highest number in a 9-month period for 8 years. So
but in 8 years, I would say it's pretty bad ground to compare with.
Well, potentially, but you can only go with what's gone. They have inherited the infrastructure and the resources from the previous government, and but it wasn't really achieving anything, was it?
Well, so, it may have done, but it may have done. That's the whole point. And now, wait,
it may have done at some unspecified point.
So Trump is now deporting people to Rwanda.
One person.
And I mean, is Trump's record on deportation something we really want to emulate in this country? I think even if you're, and I think it's very valid to have concerns about immigration and about the, and about managing it in a more regulated way. But I don't think even sort of hardliners would seriously want to emulate Trump. But getting back to this story. I mean, I feel I make this point whenever I come on this show.
Well, we go round in circles, don't we?
To talk about immigration. I think completely understand why people think we need to reduce immigration, as I say, to manage it in a more controlled way. But to do that, you need border security, you need administrators and facilities, you need a constructive relationship with neighbouring countries, and it all costs money. And at the same time, we've got massive NHS waiting lists, although thankfully they're going down. We've got schools with the roofs caving in. We've got councils going bankrupt. So there's a question of how we prioritise our resources and how we get money to the.
Surely the elephant in the room is we need to stop people coming here in the first place, and that means having a very strong deterrent. And I was talking to Will Kingston earlier, and he said that's what they did in Australia. They put the Navy there, they turned the boats back, and it worked.
Yeah, I do think that's the actual crux of the issue. We're always, in this country, I feel, dealing with the issue once people have arrived and once we're handling them here. There does need to be something where we have stronger positions in place, whether that's getting deals with France, we can physically push them straight back, or what the position we're going to be moving forward is now. But just this month we had our record number of people crossing in small boats. The weather's getting better. More people are coming. They're not being stopped. And if we are putting them up in these hotels, and it is looking quite nice and cushy here, people are going to keep on coming.
I don't think people... You've got to understand the perspective of the migrants. I don't think people are coming here because they think life in an asylum hotel or in some of these landlords' properties is so amazing. I think it's because they live in places where life is incredibly difficult, even by the standards of people who have hard lives here. I think I do agree that there needs to be some form of deterrent, but we also need to think about what can we do to support other countries to make life in those countries more appealing.
But there's something else going on here. We've heard from many asylum seekers who have been, say, to Germany, claimed asylum in Germany, decided they didn't like it in Germany because it's a very basic existence they're given. They've then moved on and come to the UK because we're a soft touch.
I think countries like Germany and Scandinavian countries have taken more immigrants as a proportion of their population from things like the Middle East crisis and from the Ukraine situation than we have. I mean, I think a big part of this is the English language. Like, a lot of people speak a reasonable level of English in a way that they don't speak Swedish or German, because it's the international language of business. We have a historically more diverse population thanks to our kind of colonial history, so people often have family ties here, and I think that's a big pull factor as well.
I'm sorry, I'm just to break in, I'm just watching the pictures coming in from the Vatican. Donald Trump has now arrived at Vatican City. Also, we can see the wide shot, tens of thousands of people packing, as you can see, into we're just showing you their pictures coming in live from the Vatican City, of people there to pay their respects during the funeral of the late Pope Francis. We'll just keep an eye on that. But let us.
No, I was just going to say one more point that hasn't been touched on too much is the concern with just sort of forcing these asylum seekers into other communities. I mean, we saw last summer the huge number of riots that went on, and a lot of them, you know, they were very wrong, and setting on fire of hotels, but those sort of the anger within communities of people being forced in there, and you've got to create some sort of social cohesion, not just force people in there and leave them there to not be able to work and not do anything.
So we've had so many messages saying that actually there is going to be civil unrest in this country if something is not done.
It wouldn't surprise me. And we've already had civil unrest. This is something that is ongoing.
We have had civil unrest.
Angry about this, and rightly or wrongly, it's about making it so that these communities can come together and people can be sort of integrated into communities rather than forced in there where they're then unable to work, don't go out, don't do anything. I mean, personally, I'd be quite supportive of allowing these people to work again and getting them to do jobs that
but if
don't.
You do that, then all you're doing is you're saying you're going to make them productive whilst we wait for the asylum application to be processed.
Then speed up the process. That's £700 million. Let's speed up the process.
I'd also say that when you talk to people who feel very strongly about this issue, deep down it triggers other concerns about the way Britain is run as a country as a whole. I think, for example, this story around the housing of migrants, I think what kind of is inflammatory about it is that you've got this idea of a big multinational billion-pound corporation like Serco having this big conference for rich landlords, and they're all there kind of discussing how can we get our hands in the taxpayer's pocket and make a lot of money out of it. And I think there's a real sense that you know, there are a lot of communities in this country that are oppressed and exploited, and that don't have the opportunities that, you know, other parts of the country have. There's a very good piece in The Guardian in the aftermath of the riots talking about how there weren't riots in prosperous towns in the south of England where you know, people are a lot happier about their lives and have, you know, less reason to be aggrieved more generally about society beyond
I disagree.
migration.
I think the resentment is simmering. I just don't think it's as vociferous.
Well, I think possibly people are, you know, exercised about migration in places like that, but they're not burning down hotels and setting fire to mosques and stuff. And I think it's about a general dissatisfaction with the UK socioeconomic model
we've
as a
got
whole.
1.2 million people waiting for social housing. 1.2 million. Now, even if the government actually builds 500,000 homes, which is what or 300,000 homes over 5 years of 1.5 million, that only just accommodates the 1.2 million who are waiting for social housing. They won't build them. We'll be no better off, and this will continue.
Well, it's certainly going to continue. Like you say, the backlog's just getting bigger. More people are just coming over. So unless they find a real solution, they're not smashing the gangs. They haven't managed to make any headway in the past sort of year they've been in.
We have to pause there for the moment. Lettuce and Luke, just stay where you are. We'll continue talking about the Pope, also Donald Trump. I want to talk about that as well. I also want to talk about something quite interesting. I saw this morning. Sweden has announced its plans to deport immigrants who are Swedish citizens but have failed to integrate into Western society. What do you think of that? This is Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 8:43, Saturday, April the 26th. We're in the middle of Head to Head. Letis Bromovsky and Luke Hiljar join me this morning. Let's talk about Ukraine. This is all over the papers as well this morning. I'm going to paraphrase this, but President Trump has lashed out at Zelensky. Fascinating. They both at the funeral this morning as well. This is after Ukraine appeared to resist a US ultimatum to concede swathes of territory to end the war. I mean, the bottom line is essentially Steve Witkoff met with Putin. It's all smiles. Trump wants closer alignment with Russia. At the same time, he thinks, in his words, that Zelensky is a loser. This is a deal on the table. You take it or you leave it. Zelensky said, well, he can't do that because it breaks international law, for a start, to allow Russia to keep the annexed territories, but also it has to go to a referendum. This Zelensky is in trouble.
Well, I'm going to say the bottom line of this is that this is not a peace deal. This is something that is being forced onto Ukraine by Trump, who does not care at all about Ukraine or the future of Ukraine. He simply wants to complete what he promised when he came into office, which is to end the two wars, end the Israel-Gaza war, end the Ukraine-Russia war. And there's nothing about this that seems fair to Ukraine. Time and time again, I feel like Ukraine have been let down in the past, whether that's about Crimea, whether that's around its nuclear disarmament, and they said, no one will invade you, just give up your nuclear weapons. They signed away that deal, and now look where we are.
No NATO.
No NATO. If this goes through, if this is forced upon Ukraine, it'll only be a pause to give Russia time to rearm, for them to then go on and invade someone else.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, objectively looking at this, what does Ukraine gain? Nothing.
I mean, I always think it sounds like crazy conspiracy theory talk, but if Trump was a Russian asset, if he was being paid or blackmailed by Russia, well, what would he be doing differently?
Well,
yeah,
he's got, he's obviously very close to Putin. He's got business relationships in Russia, and by all accounts, a colourful past there. What would he be doing differently if he was a Russian asset and he isn't now? As you say, it just seems so one-sided towards Russia, which is a brutal dictatorship that's invaded another country to take chunks of its territory against their will, and so harsh on Ukraine, which is the wronged party here, which was not a perfect country by any means, but essentially a peaceful democracy until it was invaded.
What would you do if you were Zelensky?
Well, it's a tough one because obviously he's fighting a bigger, more powerful adversary.
But they managed to hold on, and even in recent offensive, it was 3 years ago, they said this war would be over in 3 days or a week or whatever.
But with our weapons.
Well, we say that.
But there's another point to this, but weapons also, which have been paid for with cash given from the States as well.
But that all being said, Europe has failed Ukraine just as much as the US is failing it right now. We failed to rearm. We failed to see the warning signs that have been right in front of us for years, and we've really given in to Russia time and time again. And I'm surprised that this is happening again.
So the only other thing that I would then throw back at you, just in terms of there does seem to be movement on this coalition of the willing. The fact is that Trump now seems to be saying, actually, we will help you. We won't put soldiers on the ground. We'll give you strategic support. We'll give you intelligence. We'll give you all those things, which are absolutely crucial. Without those, of course, the coalition of the willing won't happen at all. Trump also says that actually it will mean that American personnel will be in Ukraine, so Russia won't be emboldened. Do you buy that?
Potentially, but I think sort of rhetorically he's giving huge encouragement to Russia when Zelensky says that Crimea is part of Ukraine under international law and should be returned to Ukraine, which is a perfectly reasonable point. Trump, goes off on one when Putin is bombing Kiev. In the middle of a supposed ceasefire, then all he can say is, "Oh, stop, Vladimir." I think it's quite clear where his priorities are, and I think that if you're in Zelensky's shoes, committing to the fight with such sort of weak support from a country that's supposed to be the world's leading democracy, I think makes it incredibly challenging.
Also, when you look at this from Russia's perspective, what incentive do they have at all to sort of create a peace deal that doesn't get everything that they want? Their entire economy now is based on like pumping military weapons, creating more military vehicles. If they signed a real, meaningful, genuine peace deal, their economy would fall apart.
And there aren't any real sort of guarantees that stop them from that would prevent them from trying again in the peace proposal. If you watch, if you see clips from Russian TV, they openly talk about how Trump's election has given them time to rebuild their armed forces for a much bigger war in Europe. So I think we need to be really careful about emboldening them.
I'm just breaking in to say Prince William has now arrived at the funeral of the late Pope Francis. He's now in the Vatican. We can see those pictures we're bringing you now. So we'll bring you more on that. We're keeping our eye on that because, of course, the funeral begins in 11 minutes. Time. We'll go to a break actually now so that we can do that. Don't go anywhere. This is Talk.
So if you look at the housing companies that are making lots of money, the subcontractors, which are the hotels, then you get the non-governmental organisations that get funding from the government to help the asylum applicants. Then you get those charities across the country that are really sucking off the teat of council taxpayers' money because they're also receiving it. You look into an industry, an asylum industry, that is running roughly around £20 billion a year.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 8:52 on Saturday, April the 26th. Live pictures coming in from the Vatican for the funeral of the Pope Francis, late Pope Francis. Just watching that. That is due to start in 7 minutes' time. Very quickly, playing loud music on trains should be illegal, according to the Liberal Democrats. The party is calling for a law to explicitly ban headphone dodgers from playing music and videos out loud on public transport in England. Offenders would be fined up to £1,000 under the plans, which have been backed by the Conservatives. I'm all in favour.
I'm also all in favour. I think the Lib Dems have finally won my vote after all their funny proposals they put forward.
Does seem a little at odds with the whole Liberal part of Liberal Democrats, but I do find it very obnoxious.
It is very obnoxious.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, at breakfast yesterday, I was sitting there and there's a man having a conversation with someone on his phone, on speakerphone.
I know.
What's that
about? Which is so strange as well. Or they're like watching TikToks, really bad, awful TikToks, and they've got it on full volume. It's not even like a subtle volume.
You do sort of wonder where's it going to end? The people who talk too loudly, you know, so people with deep voices going to have to sort of worry about, you know.
But isn't there a difference between having a conversation with another human being and then listening to something of your
of course
choice?
Of course there is. I'm being slightly facetious. I don't enjoy it. I do think there are probably bigger things in the world to worry about. I can't say that it ruins my day when I encounter this phenomenon.
Doesn't it? It ruins mine. I don't like it.
It immediately annoys. A bit like the same anger you get from slow walkers walking in front of you on the pavement. I get the same anger.
Do you?
But as with all of these
I'll tell you what it is.
Massive rucksacks.
No, I get angry when people go through the tube barrier and stop and then look at a map right in front of you.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. Or block the exit or whatever it is.
You should be on the Lib Dems manifesto.
Maybe I should, the poster boy.
Changing.
Yeah. I mean, but it says something actually about the way our sensibilities and the way that we behave. If you go back 10, 20 years, that would never have happened.
Also, it does show a bit of respect to the people around you. Like, generally, you would sit there and just, if you read your book or go on your phone, listen to music, but just wear headphones.
But it's like people who put their feet on the seats on trains.
Yeah, no, that's not. But also,
or do you like that? Is it liberal?
No, I'm not a fan of any of these antisocial behaviours on public transport. I just think there's, possibly a question of proportionality. I mean, I rarely see anyone doing this who's older than about 14, so I feel
No, the man this morning, the man at breakfast yesterday was in his late 50s.
Yeah. Well, he's speakerphone, not music. Is there a sort of
no, there's
tier
no
of punishment? That's 500.
So what I would do is I would take the phone off them and stamp on it.
Wow, I'll film you while you do that, and we can go viral.
I'd probably be in trouble and be arrested.
But how are they going to police it? That actually comes down to is how on earth are they going to police that?
That's a very good point. Very quickly, if we can, white men have been blocked from applying for jobs at Premier League football clubs. A potential legal error by the world's richest league has led to a number of teams, including Manchester United and Liverpool, recruiting for coaching roles only open to ethnic minorities and women. What? These I mean, is that acceptable?
I mean, no, of course it's not. If you're going to sort of be discriminating against any race or group under the Equalities Act from 2010, you can't be doing things like this. If this was an error, it was an incredibly stupid error by a very, very big company that sort of should have known better.
Well, Ipswich Town, Fulham, who else? Other big clubs?
I'm a football fan, and
right.
I know there's been a lot of debate in football about the fact, obviously, you have a very high proportion of the players from diverse ethnic backgrounds, and but not so much at all in coaching roles and in executive roles. And there've been some outreach programmes to understand why that is and to try and address it. And I know that the team I support have had a black coach working with them in order, as part of that programme. I think it's well-intentioned. I don't know the full details of the story. I suspect there might be a bit more to it than that. But I think there is good evidence that certain unconscious biases are at work in explaining why the very high number of non-white players doesn't translate to coaching, management, executive roles. And I think it is right that football clubs look at that. As I say, I don't know the facts of the case and potentially whether they've gone about it in entirely the right way, but I think it is an issue that football needs to look at.
Fine. Thank you very much. Very good to see both of you this morning. Letis Bromovsky, journalist at the Mail Online, and Luke Hildyard, author of Enough, Why It's Time to Abolish the Super Rich, and director at the High Pay Centre. And that was this morning's Head to Head.
ahead.
The scenes coming in from the Vatican, tens of thousands of people you can see in the Vatican there, just waiting to start the funeral of Pope Francis. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, just arriving, I'm being told, as we speak. So we've got world leaders, we've got royalties from around Europe joining there. As you can see, we've got pictures coming in from outside there. And of course it's taking place outside, so they are all seated in that sort of amphitheatre area outside the Vatican itself. As I say, the funeral begins in a couple of minutes' time, 9 o'clock British summer time and 10 o'clock Central European time. It is extraordinary to see a gathering of so many world leaders and obviously the order of hierarchy in terms of those people who are Catholic, those non-Catholics. Of course, the King is not there. Prince William is representing the King at the Vatican City. Also, as I was saying earlier, the fact is that the countries are being organised according to their alphabetical order in French, which may pose some issues. Donald Trump obviously there as well, with Zelensky there as well. That's going to lead to some quite interesting conversations, I think, after that service. We believe the service is about an hour long. The Mass is an hour long, and then there will be a procession because Pope Francis is not to be buried in the Vatican, but in a smaller religious site outside of the Vatican. We'll bring you more as and when we get it. This is Talk, this is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning, don't go anywhere.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humphrey Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar. Hello, and lady. Unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
very good morning to you. Just after 9 o'clock on Saturday, April the 26th. Live pictures coming in from the Vatican of the funeral of Pope Francis. World leaders there, members of royal families from around Europe as well, representatives of all countries, tens of thousands of people packing in to the Vatican. We'll bring you more on that in just a moment. But great news in the spirit of Weekend Breakfast. The Tweed Run is taking place in London today. Some 400 people dress in their best tweed and then cycle for 10 miles in their impeccable outfits, all in the name of charity, kids.
How could I forget to mention the bicycle is a good invention? Sitting there in a silent movie beside the only girl who really ever knew.
Also, it's Remember Your First Kiss today, a day that encourages you to reminisce on your first special moment. Was it sweet? Was it actually clumsy, funny or hideous? And happy birthday to Melania Trump. She is the First Lady of the United States. She's obviously there at the Vatican at the moment attending the funeral of the Pope, and she turns 55 today. Happy birthday! Right, let's move on to this hour's Fascinating Facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
So on this day in 1607, Captain John Smith landed at Cape Henry in Virginia with the first group of colonists who established a permanent English settlement in America. Also on this day in 1914, the birth of Charlie Chester, comedian, TV and radio presenter who broadcast almost continuously from the 1940s to the 1990s. Also, on this day in 1923, the marriage of Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, later obviously becoming the Queen Mother, to the Duke of York, later becoming King George VI. That took place at Westminster Abbey in London. It was the first royal wedding at the Abbey since 1383. The newly formed British Broadcasting Company wanted to record and broadcast the event on radio, but the Abbey chapter vetoed the idea. And one more. On this day in 1926, the birth in Audley Edge, Cheshire, of David Coleman, former sports commentator and presenter who worked for the BBC for almost 50 years. In 2000, he was awarded the Olympic Order, the highest honour of the Olympic movement. And those are this hour's Fascinating Facts.
Weekend breakfast, feel alive and right. With David Bull, everything's just right.
Well, a very good morning to you. 5 minutes past 9 on Saturday, April the 26th. We have live pictures coming in from the Vatican of the funeral of Pope Francis. As you can see, the coffin is being carried down the aisle there in the funeral service, lined by cardinals on either side. Thousands of people packing into the venue outside. We've also got world leaders and dignitaries and royal families all there as well, countries represented from around the world. Joining me now, Marco Colombo, journalist and political analyst from the Vatican City. He'll join in just a second. We'll just take in those pictures, though. This is an historic moment in so many ways. There are some changes to the way that this service is being carried out. Pope Francis, I think it's fair to say, was a modernist. I mentioned this earlier. I was particularly struck when, with his line on LGBT people. He said, if they're good people, then who am I to judge them? It is for God to judge them. That kind of makes a sort of stark change from the traditional teaching of the Church. What happens now, though, is the conclave, which I want to talk about in a moment, which is where the cardinals will lock themselves in the Vatican. They have their phones taken off them, so they have no way of actually being in touch with the outside world. The doors are closed. By the way, conclave, on conclave, means with a key. And that is exactly what they do. They lock them in until they decide who the next pope will be. They then cast ballots for who they want to be the next pope. If there is no agreement, then the ballots are burnt, and black smoke then emerges from the Vatican, and that continues until the moment that they do agree on a pope. And then at that point, the smoke changes to white smoke. That is what is happening at the moment in the Vatican. The funeral and the Mass has begun. We believe the Mass is going to be about an hour long. Lots of questions about who is going to replace this Pope. By the way, it's been 866 years since the papacy of Britain's only ever pontiff. So the question is, could we have a British Pope? His tenure ended in 1159. And the history of the Catholic Church, of course, in the United Kingdom, I think it's fair to say, has been pretty turbulent ever since, not least thanks to Henry VIII, who decided that he didn't like the Catholic Church and set up the Church of England with him as the head of it. There are some cardinals in the running to be a pope, a British pope. There is Cardinal Vincent Nichols, who's 79, who was born near Liverpool. He served as the Archbishop of Westminster since 2009. There's also Cardinal Timothy Radcliffe, 79, born in London in 1945. There's another one. There's Cardinal Michael Fitzgerald, 87 years old. He is one of the leading experts on Christian-Muslim relations as one of the Catholic Church's delegates to the Arab League of Nations. There is also Cardinal Arthur Roche, 75, born in West Yorkshire in 1950. He was ordained a priest at the age of 25 in the Diocese of Leeds. Some in the Church regarding him as a cleric who was fast-tracked to hold high office. Well, joining me now is Marco Colombo, who's a journalist and political analyst live from the Vatican City. Marco, good to see you once again. The service now underway in the Vatican. It really is an historic day, and I think that's exemplified by just the sheer numbers of dignitaries that have flown in from around the world.
Absolutely. I'm here in St. Peter's Square. The funeral has started with some chanting. You can hear that behind me. 140 head of state, prime ministers have gathered. 40 leaders of confessions. I've seen coming to St. Peter's Square a lot of young people, Boy Scouts. There was the Jubilee of the Youth happening this week, so people were already supposedly coming, and I've seen a lot of Latin Americans. I've seen a lot of joyful people coming in, streaming into the square. The gates are still open, and the funeral and the procession is starting just now.
It really is an extraordinary sight. I think one of the other things I was struck by is the fact that the Vatican said, look, we've been doing this for thousands of years, leave it with us. We talked about the seating and obviously the hierarchy of seating, and this is done whether you're a Catholic and then they get precedence, and then the non-Catholics, that's where Prince William will sit representing the King. And then you have the various royal families, and then behind them, the world leaders. And this is all about the possible controversy of where people are sitting. Now, Donald Trump seems to be sitting in a different seat to the one I expected him to be in. Have we lost you, Marco?
Yeah, sorry. I was actually told that one thing, funerals in the Vatican reception is really bad. You have 1 million people on the phones, 4,000 journalists all logging into the same Wi-Fi. So sorry about that.
Not at all. I was just saying, so just in terms of the seating, it looks like Donald Trump is in a different seat to the one I expected, unless I've got that wrong.
Well, then, as we spoke earlier, I'm sure a lot of dealings have happened. Donald Trump is on a very brief visit. He only landed yesterday in Rome Airport at 11 o'clock at night, and he's leaving at 1:30. He's expected to meet world leaders, so it's unlikely to happen. He might going to shake some hands. It's very unlikely he's going to have left, including Meloni. So where he's seated and who is actually be able to talk to is very important. So I guess the Vatican has taken that into consideration.
I was just talking before you joined me about it is potentially possible that the next Pope could be British. I spoke about the fact that there are 4 cardinals who could be in line. None of them are spring chickens, I think it's fair to say. obviously, the decision on who is going to be the next pope is crucial for the 1.4 billion Catholics around the world. But the decision is highly complex, and actually, I think it's fair to say that the front runners in the past have never gone on to actually be ordained as pope.
Yes, indeed. It's a very interesting political game. It's worth mentioning there are more Catholics than Protestants in UK at the moment. Tony Blair turned Catholic, so even Britain is this trend of turning to Catholicism. It's other countries like Brazil, who used to be the most populous Catholic country, are now leaving the supremacy to African countries like Congo. The Congo Cardinal is just one of the first. So we might have the first African and the first black one. So it's a very interesting moment for the church, whether to go right and go back to Ratzinger and go back to be a European pope, as it's been for many centuries, or do something different. It's worth remembering that Bergoglio was the first Jesuit. He was the first pope from Latin America. He was also a pope of the people. He was in a different way from Wojtyla. He didn't have a...
We'll try and re-establish contact with Marco. As he said, of course, millions of people there and all using their mobile phones as well, and the Wi-Fi and all the rest of it. I mean, just in terms of who would be the next pope, it will have a profound impact on the 1.4 billion baptised Catholics. I said it's highly unpredictable, actually, and often a very strange process. So the College of Cardinals meet in conclave in the Sistine Chapel. 80% of the cardinals, by the way, are appointed by Pope Francis himself. So that may well mean that they elect someone with a global perspective. I hear you've got back to us. That's quite interesting, though, isn't it, that Pope Francis appointed 80% of the cardinals himself. And in many ways, the way that they vote in the conclave or in the conclave may well represent his feelings and thoughts and aspirations as to the future direction of the Catholic Church.
Absolutely. It's worth mentioning that even in Italy, people have been struck by the fact the Milan, which is the biggest diocese of Italy, is not represented by Como. You know, where Lake Como, where the celebrities go on, it is represented with a cardinal. Venice has always been represented with a cardinal, doesn't have one. So even in Italy, the most Catholic of countries, the countries that is supposedly representing, hosting clearly the Holy See, hasn't got the same representation as it used to. I think, it is believed that Pope Francis wants to give a voice to the people that never had one, the people of the East, the people of South America, the people of Africa, the people that he visited. It's worth remembering.
I think we may have lost Marco again. Just to let you know, in terms of the cardinals who may become pope, the front runner is Pietro Parolin. He is a 70-year-old Italian, which Marco alluded to. He was the Vatican Secretary of State under Pope Francis. He was essentially the Pope's chief advisor. He is viewed by some as more likely to prioritise diplomacy and a global outlook than the purity of Catholic dogma. And this underpins the decision-making process they have, which is either they revert to more traditional and orthodox Catholic principles, or they embrace the more libertarian side of the church. Now, the interesting thing for me is that if you've got an increasing number of Catholics from African countries and from countries like the Philippines, then there may be pressure to become more conservatively orthodox, I suppose, in the Catholic views. There's also Luis Antonio Gokim Tagle. Now, he's the one that I think my money's on him, the Filipino. He's 67. He has decades of pastoral experience, meaning he has been an active church leader. Now, the church is massively influential in the Philippines. 80% of the population of the Philippines is actually Catholic. They have a record 5 members of the College of Cardinals, and that would make a sort of huge lobbying group in terms of trying to get a decision over the line. Now, the reason I think he's quite interesting, He's a moderate in the Catholic definition sense of the word. He has dedication to social issues and sympathy for migrants, which he shared with the late Pope. Now, one thing that may appease the more conservative Catholics is he is also opposed to abortion rights. There's also Fridolin Ambongo Basungo. He's Congolese. He's 65. He could well be the first black pope that we see. He comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. He's been Archbishop of Kinshasa for 7 years. He was appointed cardinal by Pope Francis. He's very culturally conservative. He opposes blessings for same-sex marriage. He stated that unions of persons of the same sex are considered contradictory to the cultural norms and are intrinsically evil. He is viewed as a fierce advocate for the church. What's interesting about him is in 2020, he spoke in favour of religious plurality. He said, let Protestants be Protestants, Muslims be Muslims. Peter Kwodo Appiah Turkson, he's Ghanaian, he's 76. He would become the first African pope for 1,500 years if he was elected. We've got Peter Erdo, who's Hungarian. He's 72. He's been a cardinal since the age of 51. He's highly regarded in the Church of Europe. He's twice led the Council of European Bishop Conferences from 2006 to 2016. You've got Angelo Scola as well. He's an 83-year-old Italian. And there's something quite interesting I need to tell you here, which is if you're over 80, you can't vote, but you can become Pope. Reynald Max, 71. He's German. You've got Mark Wheeler. He's Canadian at the age of 80. We've got Robert Prevost, who's 69. Robert Serra, who's Ghanaian. He's 79 years old. We have another Italian, Pier Battista Pizzaballa, 60 years old, ordained when he was just 25 and then moved to Jerusalem the following month. And another Canadian, Michael Caserny, 78 years old. He was appointed a cardinal by Pope Francis and, like him, is a Jesuit. He was born in the former Czechoslovakia and his family then moved to Canada when he was 2 years old. I mean, I think it's actually pretty impossible to tell who will be the next Pope. As I say, the conclave begins after a period of mourning. The cardinals are locked in the Vatican until they decide by a majority of who should be the next Pope. Now, reports are also coming in that Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky have held a meeting ahead of the funeral today. It's alleged the pair also agreed to meet after the funeral later today, and that meeting comes after Trump said a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia was very close. You can read into that what you want, actually, but maybe the magnificent spectacle and the sense of occasion has brought the two men together under the auspices of the Vatican there. So we are just hearing that Donald Trump and Zelensky have met and are going to meet again after the funeral. The scenes are quite extraordinary, actually. A sea of red cardinals in the centre there of the Vatican in the 1 hour long mass which is taking place at the moment. We'll bring you more on all of the Pope's funeral and what happens next in terms of the conclave. We'll bring you more of that. Also, time for us, though, to take a short break. After the break, I'm going to be joined by Steve Denyer, Virgin Radio presenter, who is going to talk us through some of the big showbiz stories that have been making the headlines. That's all still to come. This is Talk.
So if you look at the housing companies that are making lots of money, the subcontractors, which are the hotels, then you get the non-governmental organizations that get funding from the government to help the asylum applicants. Then you get those charities across the country that are really sucking off the teat of council taxpayers' money because they're also receiving it. You look into an industry, an asylum industry, that is running roughly around £20 billion a year.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Weekend Breakfast. This is Talk 9:25. We're watching live pictures from the Vatican of the funeral of the late Pope Francis. As you can see there, the Mass has begun. It commenced 25 minutes ago. And these pictures coming in live, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people packing into the Vatican to witness an historic moment.
And caused him to appear, not to all people.
We believe there are 50 heads of state and 10 reigning monarchs in attendance. Just looking, and we were talking about the seating plan actually earlier. So Melania and Donald Trump now appear to be sitting in different seats to the ones that I thought they were going to be in. Next to Trump, we believe, is the president of Finland. And then Macron seems to be next to the president of Finland. So as we were hearing earlier on, that there may well have been last-minute dealings and people being moved around. Marco Colombo, our journalist and political analyst, live from the Vatican City, was telling us that just due to the sheer numbers of people packing into the Vatican, that actually they're all trying to be on the Wi-Fi and obviously using their cell phones as well, so very difficult to get a signal out of the Vatican as well. It will be interesting, and I think for the 1.4 billion Catholics around the world, it will be interesting to see which way the conclave actually goes in terms of selecting the new Pope. They may decide that they actually have to revert to more traditional Catholic roots, to more traditional teaching. It may be also the influence of countries like Africa, for example, which tend to be far more conservative in their outlook and far more literal in their interpretation of Scripture, that it may be that they then have a more orthodox Catholic Pope. There again, it may be that they feel that the Church needs to broaden to its more liberal side to encourage more people in Europe, in the West, to remain involved with the Catholic Church. I think it's difficult for us in the UK to get a sense of this, but talking to Gabriella, my setup producer, who is Italian, it is what everyone is talking about in Italy. Of course, it is the spiritual home, and it is deeply entrenched in the psyche of the Italian people. Keep your messages coming in, please. Let me know your thoughts. Also, we're just hearing reports that Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky have held a meeting ahead of Pope Francis' funeral. It's alleged the pair also agreed to meet after the funeral later today. We were saying that's going to be a very uneasy relationship, of course, because the deal on the table, as far as we understand from the United States to Ukraine, is you take it or you leave it. Steve Witkoff had been meeting with President Putin. There's no doubt that Trump wants to have a closer relationship with Putin. That has left Zelensky in a very invidious position. Indeed, it looks like the dividing line will be the Dnipro River. Everything north of that will remain with Ukraine. Pretty much everything south of that will become Russian. Whether it's officially recognised as Russian territory or whether it's seen as de facto Russian territory seems to be a moot point. Also, the US, under their plan, would gain control of the Zaporizhzhia power station. Now, Donald Trump says, well, peace can be maintained because what will happen because of the mineral deal and because we're actually holding on to the Zaporizhzhia power station is American personnel will be then in Ukraine, and that will deter further Russian aggression. Interestingly, Keir Starmer's coalition of the willing seems to be being downgraded. So the countries that originally said they were willing to commit boots on the ground to ensure the safety and security of Ukraine are now backing down. It looks like it's more like going to be more like sort of civil servants or moderators or people who intend to keep the international peace rather than military forces. Also, then we've also heard the United States now seems willing to provide strategic support, military support in terms of intel and in terms of satellite recognition and reconnaissance to the British and the coalition of the willing as well. And that in many ways may well be enough for the coalition of the willing to agree to it. We will see. So the funeral of Pope Francis still continuing in the Vatican City. Keep your messages coming in, please. It seems wrong, actually, to ask this question at this time of important national significance, international significance, actually. But the new Pope will also have to face huge political issues across the world, particularly in terms of the displacement of people. From war-torn countries into Europe. Europe is not in a very strong position at the moment. Very turbulent times in Europe, indeed. Many countries in Europe, including Italy, struggling with the migrant crisis and trying desperately to work out what to do about it. And, of course, that includes the United Kingdom as well. The question I'm asking this morning, does the Labour government have any intention to stop illegal migration? Do they know how to stop illegal migration? Your thoughts on that, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can also message us on X as well at talkTV. Actually, many of you are messaging about the funeral of Pope Francis. Good morning, Dr. D. This is Mandy. Is this going to be the time we see President Zelensky in a suit? I hope so. Also, Peter the Mole says, will Zelensky act properly this time and wear a suit to the funeral? Because today isn't all about him. It's about correct attire for a funeral. Keep those messages coming in, please. After the break, we will move away from the funeral. We will then move to entertainment news. We'll keep one eye on what is going on in the Vatican as well. Also very keen to get your voice notes on everything that we have spoken about this morning, particularly on the front pages actually as well. Starmer announcing that homes are going to be rented for Channel migrants. Remember, we've got 1.2 million people waiting for social housing, but it seems that the government is very keen to rent homes for Channel migrants instead. Also, the Times this morning reporting the land deal is the only choice. The US warns Zelensky, talking about this thing that the government, the US has said, right, this is the deal, you take it or you leave it. And then I'll just give you one piece of good news from one of the front pages this morning, and that is that we are expecting a scorcher of a week ahead as the temperatures are set to soar in the United Kingdom. Don't go anywhere. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk Weekend Breakfast, 9:34, Saturday, April the 26th. Of course, the funeral of the late Pope Francis taking place in the Vatican City. Many of you getting in touch, though, about lots of other issues. David, this is Maureen. I think it's time for our house planning to be changed. We have big building companies holding on to land, not building. There should be a time limit once planning is given to the houses. They should be built within 4 years with no leeway. Half should be social housing for British people first. She goes on to say, why is Starmer's lot advertising for rented properties for housing immigrants? More proof that he has no intention of stopping this. David, good morning. This is Lisa. I'd like to emulate Trump. I bet I won't be the only one either. Detain, deport. It's interesting, isn't it? He sent one person to Rwanda. Dr. David, oh, this is quite interesting. Why on earth would the government stop this insane illegal immigration? The vast majority of the immigrants will be granted the right to stay, will become Labour voters. Ooh, you cynic. Labour has no intention of stopping illegal migration. That's Chris. David, Stacey, good morning to you. Surely the reason why Starmer is going to provide rented accommodation to illegal migrants is so that once they have a home, they can vote. You're all on the same page this morning. The next thing will be they are able to vote as well for Labour. This is Richie in Mid-Sussex. Good morning to you. David Starmer and his Labour Party have never had any intention of stopping the illegal migrants. The fact is they're encouraging it deliberately. That's Richie in Sussex. Keep all of these messages coming in. Zoe in Lancashire, good morning to you. David, good morning. I'm really angry. I live in Todmorden and we are having no local elections this year. Reform need to get themselves up here. I don't know what's going on in that particular area, but of course local elections were cancelled. 5.5 million people, I think. It was vast swathes of East Anglia and I think Surrey and Sussex, the Isle of Wight. And this is all because Angela Rayner wants to have unitary authorities. But I would argue that's denying people their democratic right to vote. All eyes, of course, on Thursday on the local and mayoral elections. It will be very interesting, to say the least. Right, let's move on. I don't know what we call this anymore, but I can never remember. But the great news is it's time for Steve Denyer.
Steve Denyer's Entertainment News Roundup.
Oh, that's it. That's it. Why did we call it? Why has it changed again? Hello, good morning.
I don't know.
Well,
I'm just happy to be here.
I've got to write it down. Entertainment News Roundup.
Yeah, with a splash of Denyer's delights.
With a splash of Denyer's. Can I call it Denyer's?
It gets more elongated every weekend I'm on, doesn't it? Soon it's going to be the whole show.
It is, absolutely. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah. Have you been anywhere showbiz this week? Because you're always somewhere fabulous.
Well, you know, so the last couple of weeks I was doing Chris Evans' show on Virgin.
Oh, were you? You haven't told me about 100 times.
I didn't get a chance to get out there, so I've seen a couple of, I think in the last week, and I'll get to this in a moment, right. I've seen two of the best films I've seen in years.
Really?
And I've got the reviews in a moment. Just two really, really great films that are completely different from each other. I thought I'd update you on a story that's all over the press. It's on the front page. There you go.
Yeah, I mentioned it in so the front page of the Daily Mail, I mentioned it in when we did the front pages very early this morning. This is Greg Wallace. Sex pest claims left me suicidal. So Greg Wallace has revealed he was left suicidal after a string of claims he acted inappropriately on MasterChef. He admitted making smutty jokes in the past and said he must have offended a lot of people over the years, but insisted he had not groped, bullied or harassed production staff.
Yes, but you know, there's 13 allegations over 17 years, and lots of people, when this became a news story at the end of last year, really said that he was being tone deaf. Do you remember he cited women of a certain age, and then it was a mess because Rod Stewart got involved, and then lots of people like Vanessa Feltz and other people came, you know, Kirsty Allsop came on board and said, you know, we've also experienced problems. What he said is, you know, the investigation's still going on, but he does say that he was left suicidal and that his mum passed away at the end of last year, and that was, you know, that took up the final few days of her life. She was so worried about, God, you know, so it's an awful. It is, the whole thing is really mucky and dreadful. He said that he got a barrage of you know, kind of things said on social media that left him devastated. I mean, to be fair, he's saying, you know, it's not all true. He has said things that he regrets. The investigation's still going on. But it lifts the lid of what happens when an incident like this hits the press. And so, you know, seemingly, he's been one of the highest paid, the highest profile presenters in 2 decades. And overnight, he's lost it all, hasn't he? His reputation.
I mean, I don't know enough about this, but I mean, I do wonder how much of this is also a vestige of age and the way that people used to behave and the sort of stuff that people used to say that was common parlance and the way that it's now perceived. And of course, you have to be incredibly careful. We've spoken about this.
Yes, we have.
In an open office environment, there may be things that you or I might say that are then misconstrued by younger people.
And do remember that this is a bigger problem, a wider problem for the BBC. So this is now, what, the 6th or 7th really high profile, you know, after Hugh Edwards, after Jimmy Savile, and people are, I suppose people are more likely now to feel free to complain because the forum's open because of these high-profile things, you know. So it's a moving picture, but it's an interesting, you know, this is the first interview. He's remained silent, apart from, some might say, you know, giving statements that were a little bit tone-deaf by the end of last year. So, interesting thing. Who knows what's going to happen? The investigation's still going on. Can you come back after an incident like this? You know, is it a case of going on Celebrity Big Brother or I'm a Celebrity?
We'll never say never.
No.
And also the public, I mean, we have very short memories generally, don't we? So the period of sort of just disappearing and then coming back and reinventing in another way. I suppose also it depends how those allegations play out and, you know, the ongoing case against him. Let's talk about The Sun, because I was very flippantly read this out earlier.
I know you hate talking about Oasis.
I just don't like them.
Well, you know...
I just don't... They're rubbish.
It's the biggest show
Is it?
This year. Loads of people said it wasn't going to happen. There was a great incident yesterday where Noel Gallagher joined our colleagues at Talk Sport and spoke about the fact that the brothers have got back together. And you'll see this on the front page of today's Sun.
Yes.
This is... It's a working man's club in Stoke Newington that was locked down, staff sworn to secrecy. They had to sign these, you know, NDAs, and the brothers got back together, seemingly for an Adidas. Is it Adidas or Adidas? However you want to say it.
Oh, I say Adidas, but I'm old.
I say that as well, yes. That's why we get on so well, isn't it?
Young people say Adidas. Oh, no, I'm being told that Adidas was... Really? No, we grew up... I had Adidas. Oh, yeah.
Really?
It was Adidas when I was a young boy.
Let me check this. Is it biopic or biopic?
Biopic.
OK, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Just checking. So anyway,
have you got another one?
No. They have been seen back together. This would excite a lot of people. Seemingly they're getting on. Apparently they spent Easter Sunday together at I think Noel went over to see Liam, and they are kind of getting on. They need to get on for this show to work. Remember, there's 17 shows and they start on July the 4th, so all eyes on...
They just look like 2 middle-aged men to me.
Yeah, and I wonder what they sound like now. You know, the last time they performed together was 2009. They had this bitter fallout in Paris. I was interviewing the lead singer of... Do you remember the band Cast? Or is it Cast? That's another one. They did Fine Time, and they supported Oasis back in the day. They will be supporting Oasis on this first gig. And John Power, the lead singer of Cast, was saying, you know, it's going to be a very emotional thing. There are going to be, you know, family members with their daughters, with their sons, and people who never thought they'd get to see this moment back in a stadium to witness, and it is a moment of history.
OK, here we are. David, thank goodness for a voice of sense. Good morning, David. I'm with you on Oasis. They're absolutely dreadful band.
Have you been texting yourself?
No, I'm not. But I mean, I just have never understood Oasis. To me, it just sounds like someone's put the dishwasher on.
Oh, they did some great songs. I mean, Don't Look Back in Anger is a song of a generation. Wonderwall is an incredible moment.
It's not rubbish.
OK,
it's
all right,
utterly rubbish.
Should we move on?
Yeah, I think we'll move on.
OK.
I mean, normally you and I agree on tracks, but this is in the Venn diagram of life. I just can't get involved.
And I take your opinion, but you cannot deny this is huge. And through this gig gig coming back. We had the whole problems of people, you know, poor people trying to get their tickets and the dynamic pricing and is it fair, is it not? So I think these gigs will possibly change law in the way that you and I get tickets for these things. It's such a big moment. It's
I will believe you, Steve. I will believe it.
Millions of people, 50 million people wanted tickets for these gigs.
All right.
And only 1 million people got them. You know, different people managed to get the tickets for the gigs. So
wow.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wait and see.
There we go.
But you see, you make a very good point, which is that, of course, it's been a long time since they played together. They're looking rather heavier than they did.
Aren't we all?
I'm being... Well, speak for yourself. I'm being nice, but they're looking a bit heavier, and maybe they just can't sing.
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? It's going to be really interesting to see how good they are. Because the other week on Virgin, we played one of these, you know, tribute bands. Next to the last time Oasis actually sang, the tribute band sounded so much better.
Did it?
Yeah, if you kind of cite them, pair them up. So it'd be interesting to see how much they rely on backing vocals. Is it going to be 100% live? Can Liam still do, you know, You Wonderwall?
So now you've got me on a tangent, because I love a tribute band, you see.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, love them.
No Oasis.
Oh, really?
Definitely maybe Ish. They're all big Oasis fans.
Well, weirdly, Dean, my producer, has just mentioned Benidorm, and of course I would agree wholeheartedly with him there. There are huge acts in Benidorm. Amazing tribute acts. What was it? No Oasis? They've got one, apparently, in Benidorm as well?
Yeah. And
fake that.
And apparently, when Robbie left, Take That, the Robbie Williams in Fake That was sacked.
No.
So it all happens.
Is that right?
You've got to look out for the tribute
So my
bands.
favourite one is the Drifters in Benidorm. They're very good.
Okay.
Saturday night at the movies. They're very good.
I wonder if people could message in and say, what's the best tribute band you've ever seen?
Yeah.
Because some of them are better.
Listen, Pete them all. Oasis, can't stand them. They are.
Okay.
No Oasis would be a better name for them. You see, look, this is what I'm talking about. Yes, here we are, David. I agree. Oasis are terrible. Somebody reincarnate Freddie or Teresa.
Well, listen, maybe it would be better to see a tribute band, because it's going to be 20 quid, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're probably going to get the singer. The singers are a bit younger than these
I'll tell you what,
brothers.
if you go to Benidorm, it's for the price of a stiff drink.
There we are.
Yeah.
I can't wait for you to take me.
Oh, quite. Anyway, keep all your messages coming in about tribute. What was your favourite tribute act? This is much more interesting than Oasis.
I bet it is. I bet there's some great ones. I bet some people listening and watching have been to see some incredible acts.
Yeah. The Illegal Eagles.
Like it.
Yeah.
Like it.
Oh, right. Now, I'm sorry, I've derailed you completely. Where are we going now?
Can I talk about a couple of really good movies?
Yes.
I've got a trailer I want to play you.
Yeah.
This is Steve Coogan, OK, and the Penguin in The Penguin Lessons. Would you like to look at the trailer?
I would, but after this break.
Oh, OK.
So if you look at the housing companies that are making lots of money, the subcontractors, which are the hotels, Then you get the non-governmental organisations that get funding from the government to help the asylum applicants. Then you get those charities across the country that are really sucking off the teat of council taxpayers' money because they're also receiving it. You look into an industry, an asylum industry, that is running roughly around £20 billion a year.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Talk. This is Weekend Breakfast. I'm David Bull. Steve Denyer is in the house. You're amusing me enormously. Now, look, we've really tapped into something here about tribute acts. This is they have a Tom Jones sound-alike in Benidorm. He is Tim Jones. However, it's not unusual to have slightly different names for trivia.
Love that.
For trivia. Oh, that's a gold star. You get the blankety-blank checkbook and pen for that. Hi, David. I'm with you, mate. I always thought Oasis were very overrated, that their biggest fans are themselves. Thank you, Mick, for that. A great Guns N' Roses tribute act called Guns 2 Roses.
Nice.
Better than the real thing. And I've even played with members of the real band. That's Kevin there. Hi, David. Best tribute band. I've started something. Best tribute band, Rumours of Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, I like it.
That's good.
I bet they're good. I hear they're
Who,
good.
by the way, I'm singing tonight at the Glass House in Gateshead. That's Dave in Newcastle.
Look at that. Free cheeky plug.
Cheeky plug. Good morning, Dave and Steve. The best tribute band I've ever seen is Gordon Hendricks as Elvis. He is fantastic. That's Mags in Worcestershire. Good morning, David and Steve. I've done that one. Hi, excellent show. Forget all this Oasis hype. Great, awesome British and extremely patriotic band are Iron Maiden. They're phenomenal live proper band. Have a fabulous day, Rich.
Amazing.
Yeah, there we go. Glenn Leon tribute at the new Amen Corner. Absolutely brilliant. The best tribute act, Illegal Eagles. I've seen them a number of times. Good morning, Chuckles, says Jane. I went to see Illegal Eagles. They're fabulous, and I've seen the Drifters 3 times. See?
There we are.
There we are. Anyway, sorry, your movies.
Yeah.
Oh, Blobby Williams.
Blobby Williams. There we go. Okay, all right then. Can I, Steve Coogan's
Morning
in this...
Chuckles. That's very funny.
Steve Coogan's in this film. It's called The Penguin Lessons. It features an actual penguin. Can I show you a little clip of the trailer? Because I went to see this movie and I absolutely loved it. Take a little look at this. 20 seconds.
I might go to Uruguay. Go dancing, maybe meet a couple of ladies.
Where is he from? Is he yours?
I rescued him from an oil slick, and now he thinks he's my friend.
Okay, off you go.
He's not my penguin. I don't like penguins.
Then why did you save his life?
Because I was trying to impress a woman.
I have to go now.
And I've ended up in a penguin.
If you don't take the penguin with you, I will arrest you.
On what charge?
Okay, looks quite fun.
It's really sweet. It's really sweet. Steve Coogan, I know he gets a lot of flack, but I think he's a great actor. He's a really great actor. This kind of reminds me slightly of Philomena, which came out 10 years ago. But this is a true story. So this is set in Argentina, the year I was born, in 1976. A long, long time ago,
Were you
Dr.
born
David.
in 76?
I was. The long, hot summer of 1976. And it's the guy who genuinely rescued this penguin in an oil slick.
Yeah.
And the penguin just wouldn't leave him alone. So the next thing, he was a teacher in a school in kind of war-torn Argentina. And the penguin lived with him, and he took the penguin into the lessons, teaching these boys. And they all got great results because they related to the penguin. And right at the end of this film, you see the actual footage of the actual man with the penguin.
Oh.
And the penguin was cast brilliantly.
Aw.
The Penguin's amazing. I mean, he stole the show. It gets very sad towards
How do you do the audition for the Penguin? Right, sit there.
Well, it didn't quack out of place.
Right.
So, you know, very, very good stuff. So I would give that, seriously, a good 8 out of 10.
What's that called?
It's 90 minutes. It's called The Penguin Lessons. You may have seen the adverts.
And where is
everywhere. It's like every cinema at the moment.
Okay, fine,
every cinema. I saw it at Greenwich Picture House
very good.
last week. The other film I've been seeing, this is completely different, but this is the most amazing movie. It's called Warfare.
Okay.
And it's about the US Navy SEALs and a mission that went wrong in Iraq in 2006. Can I just show you a little bit of what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It just kept me on the edge of my seat. Here's a little clip.
He's back. That's the 4th time he's done that.
Is he peeking and probing?
Peeking with serious intent to probe.
Alpha 2, we might have guys starting to move on our position.
Copy, we're getting a buildup of activity here too.
Yeah, I definitely see weapons at this point.
Yeah, we have definite massing.
So you may think this is just another war movie, but they do it so brilliantly now with the special effects, and there's lots of criticism that it's too graphic. It is one of the most graphic films I've ever seen, and also you feel like you're with these US Navy SEALs. You feel as an audience member that you're trapped and you're going to die, and it's the most incredible story. Again, right at the end of the movie, the real US Navy SEALs that were part of this mission pop up, and you see them. They were there when the movie was filmed. It's the most incredible movie. Like, literally, I had to have an hour to calm down after it. It's so
And that's
great.
in the cinema?
That's in the cinema.
And
It's
what's
doing
it
really
called?
well. It's called Warfare.
Warfare.
It's incredible. Again, 90-minute movie, but two of the best films I've seen in recent times. I also wanted to talk about The Diamond Heist. This is doing really well. Top 3 on Netflix. Guy Ritchie documentary. Do you remember the Millennium Dome?
Yes.
Diamond robbery. So they speak to the gangsters, the robbers that were in this. We couldn't play the trailer. There's too many naughty words, but I just wanted to say it's completely. This has got Guy Ritchie's fingerprints over it, and it's doing really well. Does it glorify these robbers? Maybe, but what a story. Of course, the police got in the way, and it's one of the big kind of diamond heist stories of the millennium. So I recommend it.
Steve, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Let's take a call very quickly if I can. Michael is in Birmingham. Good morning, Michael.
Hiya, yeah. I just want to say, as a practicing Roman Catholic, we have to be careful about projecting liberal values. I would say that most people in congregations want a more conservative vote, a more conservative approach, and that might get people back. Sometimes actually going to church feels like you go into a mosque these days, and that is rubbing up the wrong way.
What do you mean by that?
Well, for example, I was at a service where the priest prayed for the Palestinians, but not the Israelis.
Right. So you welcome a. Do you think that's the way that the conclave will vote?
Yes, I do. I think there's a more conservative element throughout the church. I mean, for a start, we can start in this country by making Catholic schools for proper Catholics, not people that want just to use them as a flag of convenience, which is unfair and immoral. And then, yeah, you know, when we hear about so many rights, let's just go back to the traditions about this.
That's a great topic, actually, generally, to do that at a future date about faith schools and actually how do you prove you're of a faith. I have to move on, Michael. Thanks so much for your call this morning. Peter Cardwell is here. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? You well?
I'm all right, thank you.
Good. Excellent. Well, we will be continuing coverage of the Pope's funeral, of course, but also a story a lot of media outlets are just ignoring is at the moment a rap band from Northern Ireland told the cheering concert goers in London, kill your local MP. They shout the only good Tory is a dead Tory, and they face a terror probe over what people are saying are pro-Hamas chants.
I was about to say, is this the band with the pro-Palestinian flags as well?
Yes.
I mean, that's absolutely shocking. Where did that take place?
So it's been referred to that was at, well, they said to play Glastonbury, but this one where they said the only good Tory is a dead Tory and kill your local MP is at the Electric Ballroom in London. So that's pretty straightforward. We have the footage. The Daily Mail is reporting this. We're talking about it today. We'll also speak to a Labour MP about all sorts of issues, including whether Labour still has a woman problem. That is something that Rosie Duffield, the MP who left Labour, has said as well. We'll talk about Reeves and her trade deal. She's in Washington at the moment. And as well as all of that, we will be talking about Trump beginning removing migrants to guess where